Monsters flooded the world, plunging it into absolute despair. Humanity fought to its last breath to defend the place they called home. Among those brave souls was our story's protagonist, Casilian Levandian. He battled the endless threat with unyielding fury. For years, he threw himself into one ceaseless war after another. He built mountains of corpses with his lone sword, his heart a stranger to fear. Then one day, he was forced to confront his own half-brother. The stubborn bastard just wouldn't fall. The battle was fierce and brutal, but in the end, he finally struck the bastard down, truly putting that piece of trash in his place. After the bloody duel, Casilian also collapsed and welcomed death's embrace. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. His soul drifted through an endless void. There, he met a human boy from a planet called Earth. The boy's name was Dojin. He was on the verge of death for reasons unknown. Before passing on, he had a simple request for Casilian. Casilian refused instantly, without even hearing the kid's plea. He just wanted to die in peace. He was done with it all. He'd lost his country to monsters, lost his family, and died like a dog on the battlefield. Meanwhile, the boy, Dojin, didn't want to live either. All he yearned for was for his family to live in peace. It seems Casilian was finally willing to hear the boy's prayer. The boy's eyes lit up like a child in a candy store. He gathered all his courage and spoke his wish for his family to be safe. And so, Casilian accepted the deal, taking on the burden of protecting the boy's family. He then awoke on Earth, in the body of the teenager, Dojin. Now, he had a new mission. Infiltrate the Namsen Gate, a place classified as a C-rank gate where only registered heroes were allowed. An automated scanner blared, demanding he scan his hero ID. Of course, he didn't have one. So, he simply walked straight through the high-security building and into the gate itself. Immediately, security alarms screamed through the facility, warning of an intruder. Once inside, he began wandering around, looking for a few monsters to vent on. That's when he ran into a squad of official heroes. These were licensed individuals, permitted to be inside the gate. They just assumed he was some lost kid. They offered to lead him out, especially since they were about to retreat themselves. But Dojin's silence gave off a strange aura. It made the heroes feel like something was off. His clothes were too casual, nothing like a hero's gear. Even for casual wear, his outfit was strangely simple. And what was with that bag on his back? From what they could tell, he looked like a useless porter abandoned by his party. But they couldn't be sure. Dojin finally spoke, confirming their suspicions had merit, but he made it clear that he came alone, with no party. Hearing this, one of the heroes sighed, figuring he knew exactly why the kid was here. He'd seen it countless times before. Kids getting hyped up by flashy hero clips online. They think it's all a game, recklessly sneaking into gates without proper registration. Becoming a certified hero requires training and tests. A C-rank gate is no playground for a rookie. If you want to start a career, find an F-rank gate, unless you want to die a meaningless death. After listening to this unsolicited lecture, Dojin gave a cold reply. I don't need to hear any of this. The hero squad was stunned by the kid's icy attitude, since they were only trying to help. But their leader spoke up, telling his team to stand down. If the kid doesn't want help, leave him. Let him fend for himself. The leader was certain the boy would learn a hard lesson soon enough. You shouldn't ignore the words of your elders. They just hope he realized how harsh these gates truly are. This place was nothing like the TV shows that praise heroes as if they were some kind of saviors. And then it happened. Dojin came face to face with a massive orc, who stared him down, ready to devour him whole. The monster charged, swinging its weapon. But it missed. The attack slammed harmlessly into the ground. Dojin had moved so fast, the orc couldn't even process it. He then clenched his fist and unleashed a devastating punch. The blow completely obliterated the orc's face. Like a scene straight out of One Punch Man, the monster was annihilated. He stood over the corpse and sighed. It's really no different at all. First, he snatched the crude sword the beast was holding. Then, he used that very sword to slice open the monster's body, digging out a shimmering mana stone. In truth, it was just a low-grade mana stone, so worthless he wouldn't have glanced at it twice in his past life. But right now, he was broke, so he'd take what he could get. Suddenly, another horde of monsters swarmed the area. They were enraged to see their comrade's head blown clean off. Dojin spun around and threw the mana stone with terrifying speed. It moved so fast, it decapitated one of them instantly. The two remaining monsters charged forward, as if they had a death wish. With a death wish of his own, Dojin had no problem granting theirs, so he unleashed his fury, tearing through everything in sight. Meanwhile, the hero party trudged through the monster-infested zone, their minds still reeling from the strange encounter with that young man. The orange-haired woman worried for Dojin, fearing he was already dead. But their captain reassured her that was highly unlikely. If he was just some unregistered kid who barged into a gate, agents from the control center would have found him in no time. The agents on duty are all rank B or higher, while this gate is only a rank C, So unless the kid foolishly charged straight at the monsters, there's no way he could die in here. The bald-headed man agreed with that assessment. He bet that arrogant brat was trembling on the verge of death, praying for a rescue. But the truth was a brutal reversal of his expectations. Our main character was the one making the monsters tremble in fear, felling them with a single, decisive blow. He moved so fast the beasts couldn't even touch him, let alone land a hit with those massive swords. Dojin appeared right behind one of the brutes, delivering a kick so powerful it shattered its skull. Once the monsters were all down, he picked up a sword from the pile of corpses and began harvesting the magic stones for himself. A moment later, he finished the job, his pockets full and ready to leave. Still, he was a bit disappointed with the day's haul, just a bunch of heavy, low-grade stones. Just then, an agent finally spotted him and called for backup. Before Dojin could even turn, the men in black blocked his path, their eyes filled with suspicion and wariness. They announced they were from the Gate Control Center and demanded to see his hero registration card. If he didn't have one, he'd have to come with them to the center to sort things out. Dojin didn't decide either way, his hesitation clear in his eyes, but his silence only ratcheted up the tension. That reaction put the lead agent on high alert. His voice turned cold and firm, stressing that Dojin needed to cooperate and follow procedure. Dojin met that rigid demand with a look of pure annoyance. It was as if this whole charade was just ruining his day. Though irritated, Dojin didn't have the energy to argue. He turned to leave, seeing that words were useless. The men in black threatened to use cuffs if he didn't cooperate, warning they would use force if necessary. Losing his patience, a hot-headed agent named Lao Ling made his move, shooting out a hand to grab Dojin's wrist. He shouted a warning that if Dojin resisted, any injuries he sustained would be his own damn fault. If this could be settled with words, it would be the best option for everyone. But it seemed Dojin's patience had run out. He instantly clamped down on the agent's wrist and gave a cold warning. "Don't get in my way." The threat was so sharp it made the agent tremble, a chill running straight down his spine. The other two agents instantly drew their weapons, magic-enhanced batons. These were grade 4 staves, strong enough to subdue an orc, not some common toy. However, to Dojin, those batons weren't nearly enough to cause any real damage. He twisted the agent's wrist so hard, the man cried out like a helpless child. Dojin delivered a cold ultimatum. "Get lost now, if you want to keep what little dignity you have left." However, the men in black were bound by duty and had to engage. They desperately tried to strike Dojin with their magic staves, but not a single blow connected. Dojin answered with a crushing counterattack. His strikes slammed into one agent's back, sending him crashing to the ground. He then pivoted, driving a blow into another's stomach. Dojin's gaze fell on the man with glasses. The last one standing knew he was in trouble, his whole body tensing for the inevitable takedown. Suddenly, Dojin's form blurred and then vanished from sight, melting completely into thin air. The agent with glasses panicked, having just watched a man disappear into nothing right before his eyes. An unexpected punch slammed into his gut, making him stagger backward in agony. It seemed Dojin was getting tired of being chased by these agents. He began to seriously consider registering as a hero. The remaining agent quickly tried to reassure him that as long as Dojin wasn't involved in anything illegal, no one would pursue him. Hearing this, Dojin asked about something called a rift. The question stunned the agent, leaving him at a loss for words. To explain, this world has many portals connected to other dimensions, places teeming with bizarre and powerful monsters. These portals appear randomly all over the globe. The magic stones harvested from monster corpses have become a priceless energy source. Because of this, the government controls all portals, known as gates, and only registered heroes are permitted to enter. Any portal that isn't under government control, or is impossible to seal, is known as a rift. Back with Dojin, he was annoyed that these men in black were always tailing him. Every time he entered a gate, they accused him of illegal entry. The agent explained that when an unregistered hero enters a gate without permission, the central system sounds an alarm, and the nearest agents are dispatched. Learning Dojin planned to enter a rift, the man warned that unlike gates, rifts aren't so simple. Trespass, it was a final warning, with no room for mercy. But Dojin couldn't care less. He grabbed the agent's face and tossed him aside like a bag of trash. In that moment, the agent's only regret was not calling for backup sooner. This situation was far beyond his control. Before walking away, Dojin glanced at the pathetic man on the ground, thinking how utterly weak he was. The agent, his arm clearly broken, still managed to scream out threats, vowing to catch Dojin and throw him in prison. The scene shifts to the Sona and Digital Complex in the Guro district. It's a massive building, now known as the Hero Complex. This was the epicenter for all transactions involving mana stones and items from the gates, and right now, it was busier than ever. Dojin headed for a shop that specialized in buying and selling mana stones. The moment he stepped inside, a smug-faced young man greeted him. The guy was endlessly scrolling through Instagram, his mind seemingly numb from a stream of useless video clips. When Dojin said he wanted to sell some mana stones, the sly shop owner immediately started boasting, claiming his shop offered the highest prices in the country. Without a word, Dojin dumped the entire haul of low-grade mana stones, still stained with monster blood, onto the counter. The sight of the blood-soaked stones made the owner cringe as if he'd been stabbed in the back, his face twisting in disgust. Still, he didn't complain. Dojin casually sipped his coffee while the shopkeeper meticulously wiped every trace of blood from the mana stones. After cleaning them up, he calculated a total of 12 low-grade stones, 16 mid-grade stones, and a few other high and low-grade ones. After deducting a 40% commission, Dojin would receive about 5.5 million, but he was furious with that cut, feeling it was completely unfair. He hunted them himself, killed them himself, and collected them himself. So why did this guy think he deserved nearly half the money? The shop owner arrogantly claimed he was being generous, saying other shops take 45% or more, then added with a smirk. If Dojin didn't like it, he could take his stones and leave, because no one would offer a better price. Of course, Dojin wasn't naive enough to fall for that trap. He started gathering his mana stones, preparing to walk out. Seeing his dirty trick fail, the owner quickly grabbed Dojin's arm, stopping him. He loudly demanded payment for the appraisal fee and for the coffee, too. The appraisal fee was 30,000 gold. Another 10,000 for the coffee, not to mention the expensive cloth, now stained with blood that had to be thrown out. In total, Dojin owed him around 350,000 gold. Dojin flatly rejected these ridiculous demands, ignoring the guy as he caused a scene. Finally, the shop owner resorted to threats. He mentioned the C-rank bodyguards he had on payroll. Just then, 3 huge thugs emerged from the back, scowling as they confronted Dojin. Their eyes were as sharp as blades. But the shop owner didn't back down either, trying to look fearless as he met Dojin's gaze with a fierce glare of his own. A moment later, the scene cuts to the shop owner's face, drenched in sweat and trembling. The man who thought he was the center of the universe had just received a rude awakening as Dojin took down all 3 bodyguards like swatting flies without even breaking a sweat. It was obvious who the real main character was here. Dojin walked back to the counter and calmly forced the price down to a 1% commission. Before the owner could even process it, the deal was sealed at 1%, no strings attached. Because when Dojin looks someone dead in the eye, no one dares to argue. With the transaction complete, Dojin calmly left the shop with a thick stack of cash, the result of his own blood, sweat, and tears. When he got home, both his grandmother and his little sister were stunned by the pile of cash he brought back. His grandmother even wondered if it was counterfeit. Dojin quickly made up a story, saying he lent the money to a friend who had since become successful and was now paying him back. His grandmother was skeptical, unsure which of his friends could be that wealthy, so he lied again, saying it was a childhood friend. Finally, his grandmother stopped asking, at least for now. Meanwhile, Dojin's little sister was incredibly proud. She was overjoyed that her brother was making their family well off. Dojin patted her head, reassuring her that from now on, they would live comfortably. The little girl jumped for joy, her eyes shining like stars. Seeing his sister so happy, Dojin realized he was slowly fulfilling a promise. It was the last wish of this body's original owner before he passed away. All he wanted was for his grandmother and his little sister, Yuna, to live safely and happily. The original owner vanished right after, before Dojin could even say a word. And when he awoke, he had become Dojin. Now, his sole purpose is to ensure this small family lives in safety and prosperity. To do that, he has to buy the safest house in all of Korea, which currently costs a staggering 110 billion. For Dojin, making money isn't the problem, as long as he can regain his original full power. This world shares many similarities with the old, destroyed world he came from, except the gates, monsters, and threats here are far weaker. For someone who once held the title of Sword God, this world is nothing more than a playground. After all, he has only been using a tenth of his true strength. Suddenly, a knock echoed at the door. Someone outside said they were looking for Dojin. He stood up and decided to open it. When the door swung open, 2 menacing thugs were standing there waiting for him. Dojin knew instantly. These were loan sharks, here to collect the 48 million won debt he had inherited. This was a debt left behind by the real Dojin, the man whose body he now inhabited. He'd only borrowed 5 million won for his grandmother's hospital bills. But these thugs were now demanding a staggering 48 million. The interest had exploded, a classic predatory loan shark scheme. They knew Dojin was raking in cash, hunting at gates, and came to collect their massive payday. And technically, the contract backed them up. But what the thugs got instead was a fist that crashed into the big man's face like a thunderclap. The impact sent the brute flying backward, rolling across the pavement. His partner stood frozen, his jaw hanging open, eyes wide in shock. He couldn't process what he just witnessed. Dojin then turned his ice-cold gaze on the remaining thug, a look that could tear through a man's soul. He reminded them that he'd already paid over 9 million in principal and interest. If they did the math correctly, they were the ones who owed him a refund. Then came another punch, sending the second man to the ground, crying like a baby. Dojin stood over them, his voice low and threatening. Go tell your boss. I'll be coming for him myself. The scene then shifts to a bustling shopping mall, packed with noisy crowds. And amidst the chaos, we see the sweet face of little Uni Yan. She's smiling brightly in a teddy bear shop, her eyes sparkling with joy. Dojin had brought his little sister shopping for the day, telling her to pick out anything her heart desired. But remember, our main character wasn't always this warm and caring. It's the memories of the original Dojin, the one who passed away, that reawakened feelings he thought had been buried forever. Now, every time he sees Uni Yan being cared for, seeing her smile, a strange warmth fills his chest. Even as his half-sister, he wants to pour all his love into protecting her, to make up for everything she's lost. In the end, Uni Yan chose a small, adorable bunny plushie. She was being humble, afraid that picking something expensive would be a burden on her brother. But Dojin refused to accept her modesty. He immediately grabbed his stuffed animal several times bigger to give to her. This was her day, and she deserved to enjoy it without a single worry about money. Afterwards, the two siblings sat down for a nice meal, chatting happily as they ate. But as they were enjoying their food, a strange voice called out Dojin's name. It was a middle-aged woman, flanked by a few bodyguards. She had the air of a fake socialite, and her voice dripped with scorn. She immediately launched an attack on Dojin, starting with his clothes. Then, she shifted her venomous gaze to Uni Yan, who sat beside him, unleashing a torrent of insults. I hope you don't end up like your mother, having a child without a husband. The words were like fuel on a fire. Dojin clenched his fists, rage burning in his eyes. Meanwhile, Uni Yan had no idea who this woman was or why she was spewing such hatred. The woman stepped closer and asked the child directly, What's your name? My name is Lee Uni Yan, she answered politely. The woman finally realized this was Dojin's sister, but that didn't stop her from mocking the girl's simple outfit, calling it shabby. Worse, she began insulting their deceased mother. At this point, Dojin wanted nothing more than to smash her face in, but he held back, refusing to be provoked. She was actually surprised that Dojin didn't explode in anger, something the old him would have done in a heartbeat. But then the vile woman went too far, leaning down to ask the child, Do you know what the word whore means? That was the final straw. Dojin shot to his feet, his eyes blazing, his voice as cold as death. You are a truly hideous woman. You look like you belong to the ORC tribe. The woman was stunned, speechless, her eyes wide and her mouth frozen shut. To understand why Dojin put up with this woman at all, we have to look at his past. Dojin was born an illegitimate child and grew up in poverty. His mother died when he was only 7, and he was forced to live with his biological father. But his father soon remarried, and life became a living hell. After his stepmother had her own son, Dojin was treated like trash and eventually thrown out of the house. He had to go live with his grandmother and his half-sister, Uni. Remembering it all, our hero couldn't help but feel a deep sorrow for the original Dojin. He tried so hard to live a good life, smiling through all the pain. But things are different now. He was here to change everything. That woman was his stepmother's daughter, his stepsister. That's the only reason he had tolerated her abuse for so long, but not anymore. He was done being pushed around. She had an ugly personality, an ugly face, and the brain of a rock. He continued his verbal assault, shattering her spirit with one harsh truth after another, like dropping bombs on her ego. He told her bluntly, The only reason you call other people ugly is because you are drowning in your own jealousy and insecurities. You're nothing but a gold digger, obsessed with other people's lives. That is the pathetic truth the world needs to see. As he continued to mercilessly tear down her pride, the entire mall's attention was fixed on them, as if watching the main act on a grand stage. The ORC woman started screeching, losing all control in a fit of pure rage. But just then, Dojin's stepmother arrived. The moment the ORC saw her own mother, she ran over, her voice turning into a whiny, pathetic sob. She cried about how Dojin had publicly humiliated her, but her mother just stared back with a cold, disappointed look. With a single, withering glance, she silenced her pathetic daughter. Make no mistake, Dojin's stepmother is a force to be reckoned with. At first, everyone thought the ORC was the stepmom, but they were dead wrong. That alluring woman turned to Dojin, a sickeningly sweet smile plastered on her face, inviting him to come back home for a visit. But Dojin wasn't falling for it. He knew the true monster hiding behind that mask, the same woman who made his life a living hell for 12 years. She kept digging up memories Dojin wanted to bury forever. The flood of memories triggered something deep inside him, his entire demeanor shifting as if old wounds had been torn open. With a voice colder than a winter storm, he stared directly at her and uttered one brutal command, Get lost. For her, Being told off by someone younger was a devastating slap to the face. She turned on her heel, trying to salvage the last shred of her dignity as she walked away. In truth, she never expected him to fight back so fiercely. Before, he would just bow his head and take it, even when she struck him for no reason. Her arrogant daughter trailed behind her, flanked by a couple of bodyguards who had stood by like useless statues during the entire confrontation. Now, let's get back to our main character. It was clear that woman and her daughter had shattered his rare moment of peace. So, Dojin decided it was time to leave. His reaction to his stepfamily was deliberate. He needed to make one thing crystal clear. The weak, silent Dojin of the past was dead and gone. That trash family of his needed to realize it, and soon. The scene shifts to a Mercedes speeding down the road. Inside are that vile woman and her daughter. The girl furiously blames her mother for leaving without making Dojin pay. She continues to curse Dojin, seething over the public humiliation. But her mother paid her no mind. She turned to her manager, demanding to know why Dojin was still alive. The bald man was clueless. According to the last report, he was supposed to be dead. The woman roared like a mad woman. How could this have happened? They had made sure the job was handled cleanly. The manager could only bow his head, promising to investigate and ensure the job was finished this time. Meanwhile, her daughter had no idea what was going on. Hearing talk of murder, she started to panic. Finally, the mother turned to her daughter with a surprising question. Do you have feelings for that little brat? The question made the girl blush, flustered and unable to answer. The truth was, she was just worried that if Dojin really died, her grandfather or father would raise hell. But the mother refused to hear any excuses. She gripped her daughter's chin, squeezing hard as if to silence any protest. She snarled through clenched teeth that her daughter was forbidden from interfering in her affairs. The woman had decided Dojin had to die. There would be no second chances, especially not after he dared to stand up and humiliate her in front of everyone. Eliminating him was the only revenge she could imagine. A decade ago, the world plunged into chaos when the rifts appeared. They were bizarre dimensional tears that birthed horrifying monsters. These beasts poured through the gates, slaughtering indiscriminately. Cities were destroyed, engulfed in flames. But from the encroaching darkness, a new light emerged. Mighty warriors, true heroes, rose to the challenge. They were the first to discover the mana stones left behind in the monsters' corpses. Back in the present, Dojin is on the move. His mind is on mana stones, the resource that completely revolutionized the world's energy consumption. Because of their immense value, nations now wage war over the rift gates to harvest them. The entire global industry now depends on the rifts and the heroes who conquer them. Becoming a hero is the only path to a stable, incredibly high income. Dojin arrives at his destination, the headquarters of Young HCS Capital. The name is a mouthful, but his reason for being there will soon become clear. He stepped into the building, and at first glance, the people inside looked like cheap thugs trying to intimidate the world with their tough guy act. But Dojin remained perfectly calm, unfazed by the tense atmosphere. The boss stubbed out his cigarette, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He pointed at Dojin, remarking on the kid's incredible nerve. Not only did he dare to beat his men to a pulp, but he had the audacity to walk right up to their front door. It proved Dojin truly didn't give a damn about anyone. Dojin calmly replied that the one who was really at a loss here was him, a statement that made the boss nearly choke on his smoke. He narrowed his eyes, growling back. What the hell did you just say? Dojin adjusted his glasses and answered slowly, his voice as cold and hard as steel. I'm here to collect my compensation. Because for far too long, this organization's clowns had caused him immense damage mentally, physically, and financially. It was only then that the boss noticed something crucial, an undeniable change. The boy from the past was no longer some meek, fragile kid. The person standing before him now was the one who had crushed his underlings like trash. All the signs pointed to one impossible theory. Dojin must have undergone some kind of legendary awakening inside that hellish gate. Even knowing this, the boss put on a brave face, mocking Dojin's newfound confidence. He sneered that this very arrogance would lead to his doom, that he was delusional about his own power. To prove his point, he waved his hand, and several burly thugs stepped forward to surround Dojin. Their muscles bulged and their eyes gleamed with menace, but to a sword god who had walked through hell itself, they were nothing more than insects. The boss kept spouting his garbage philosophy, claiming that even the awakened were nothing more than cannon fodder on the battlefield. The irony was, he saw Dojin as a mere D-rank hero, so weak his organization could snuff him out in an instant. Meanwhile, Dojin just sat there, legs crossed on the sofa, completely unfazed by the 5 thugs glaring him down. He gave a cold, simple command, sit down. The words left the boss utterly stunned, unable to believe his own ears. Keeping his ice-cold expression, Dojin's voice cut through the silence. I wasn't finished speaking. One of the goons lost his patience, his temper flaring as he stepped up to Dojin. A faint smirk played on Dojin's lips as he slowly took off his glasses, leaving his opponent even more confused. Then he unleashed a devastating blow. The Mike Tyson Ballistic Universal Minek Punch 9000. The thug flew backward like he'd been hit by a freight train. The others were frozen in shock, but the nightmare was just beginning. Dojin took down another one with a single, fluid-spinning kick, and while teaching them this brutal lesson, he calmly exposed the shady dealings the boss hid behind the facade of a legitimate loan company. He slammed a fist into some orange-haired punk, while simultaneously calling them out for forging official documents. After the punch connected, he turned to the boss, his objective crystal clear. I need a legitimate hero identity to register and earn money. The last goon tried a sneak attack from behind, but Dojin effortlessly dodged, repaying the favor with triple the force. And just like that, the entire crew was down for the count. They were put to sleep by Dojin's special lullaby, a 100% success rate. After clearing the trash, Dojin's serious expression returned. I need a flawless identity. There can't be a single mistake in the file that could cause problems for me later. The boss was still reeling from the shock. In a matter of seconds, the tables had completely turned. Dojin reminded him, you have exactly 1 day. A few of the henchmen smartly decided not to get involved. Honestly, it was a good call, since in most stories, they'd charge in like level 1 rookies trying to fight a god. The boss began to tremble, staring at Dojin with eyes full of utter disbelief and confusion. Just what was his true power level? Based on the carnage he just witnessed, the boss guessed he had to be at least a B rank. He was so lost in a storm of chaotic thoughts that Dojin had to snap him out of it. All the boss could do was nod his head furiously. Dojin stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the man's shoulder, but his eyes blazed with killing intent. He wanted to know if his stepmother, Hong Hai-du, was the one who ordered the hit. This, in fact, had already been revealed during a conversation she had with her daughter and assistant. The boss stammered, flustered and unable to answer, until Dojin's grip tightened like a vice, forcing a pained groan from his lips. The rest of the lackeys could only stand and watch, their faces pale as ghosts. Seriously, though, these guys really need to find a new barber. Finally, the boss broke down completely, confessing the wicked woman's entire plan. She wanted to drain Dojin of all his money, bury him in debt and despair, and push him to take his own life. It was a truly monstrous plan, something no one should ever do, not even to a hated child. Hearing this, Dojin squeezed his hand one final time before letting go. As the man sobbed and begged, he asked quietly, "Is that also why you locked me inside that gate?" The boss frantically denied it, playing the part of an innocent man, claiming he had nothing to do with that incident. He even argued that if Dojin had died in the gate, he wouldn't have been paid a single cent. This explanation actually made Dojin pause and think. He muttered the name Kang Cheon-woo, the one who had led him into that gate. Dojin demanded all the information they had on him, with a deadline of tomorrow. He left as politely as he came, but the atmosphere in the room was completely transformed. All the arrogance and defiance had vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. After that intense conversation, Dojin once again fell deep into thought. Deep down, his one and only desire was to protect his precious little sister and grandmother through all the pain they'd endured. It was a testament to how long he had lived in helplessness and despair. But now, the sword god was ready to tear down this entire rotten system. The next day, Dojin was officially registered as a hero, and just as planned, he received a B rank. None of that starting from F rank nonsense you see in other stories for cheap drama. He swiped his new card on the scanner, and the system confirmed his identity, proving the ID was completely legitimate. However, the machine immediately flagged a warning. The next mission's danger level exceeded his current rank. This was already getting annoying. Maybe he should have just forced that boss to give him a higher rank to avoid all this petty bureaucratic nonsense. Despite the system's relentless warnings about entering a gate far beyond his registered rank, Dojin couldn't have cared less. He simply walked right in, defying all the rules. A quick briefing on the Shadow Island gate. It was technically a B-rank gate, but that didn't mean a B-rank hunter could actually survive inside it. Typically, heroes are advised to be at least one rank higher than the gate itself to guarantee a safe clear. On top of that, the scale of this gate was ranked D, meaning it was vast and incredibly difficult for a solo run. The one saving grace was its tunnel-like structure, which made a solo hunt slightly more manageable. Still, because of its massive scale, the official recommendation was for an A-rank hero, but the words danger and risk simply aren't in Dojin's vocabulary. To him, the absolute worst-case scenario was just a tunnel packed with a horde of monsters. The cavern was tight, leaving no room to maneuver. Yet Dojin simply grinned at his first opponent, a colossal python wreathed in chaotic violet energy. For most heroes, a sight like this would be paralyzing. But for Dojin, it was a sign of good fortune. He readied his gauntlets, prepared for battle. And one more thing. This python wasn't alone. It brought along a whole swarm of its friends. Their tongues flickered out like something from an alien horror film. They lunged with everything they had, but it was utterly pointless. Dojin was a true killing machine, harvesting mana stones as if the monsters were nothing more than thin air. The Shadow Vipers were a monster species notorious for their potent, paralyzing venom. A single touch was enough to bring down any ordinary person. Knowing this, Dojin unleashed his full power, shooting forward like a bullet and throwing a devastating punch. In a split second, his fists tore through the monster's flesh. Blood erupted into the air as its body was ripped in half. With the monster defeated, Dojin glanced at his equipment. The gauntlets he bought for 300,000 won were doing their job, keeping the poison from seeping through. A worthy investment, indeed. Returning to the hunt, Dojin's gaze fell upon 4 other grotesque serpents, and he began blowing their heads apart. With terrifying speed, he pierced straight through their skulls, blood spraying as they were sent to the afterlife. Dojin stood amidst the carnage, tearing through the monster carcasses for mana stones. But to his disappointment, there was nothing. This wasn't entirely unexpected. According to the Old World's laws, monsters like these had a measly 3% drop rate for mana stones. That meant he'd have to slay hundreds just to turn a decent profit. Pressing forward, Dojin soon spotted a unique creature. Let's call him Mr. Skull Fog. Anyone else would assume this was the final boss, but Dojin knew better. He casually asked the giant serpent if it was the boss, as if it would politely answer like an old friend. Regardless, Dojin took it as a good sign. At least now he wouldn't have to worry about getting lost. He spun on his heel and launched his attack. He hoped to end this fight quickly and head home. But to his shock, despite the ferocious impact, his punch did absolutely no damage. It barely left more than a tattoo on its head. Suspended in midair and unable to evade, the monster whipped its tail, slamming Dojin into the cavern wall. After the brutal impact, Dojin began to grasp the reality of this boss's true power. This time, the monster bared its venomous fangs with a hungry hiss. It lunged forward to bite, but thankfully, Dojin managed to evade it. Using the momentum from his dodge, he sprang up to counterattack. A powerful blow landed on the monster's body, creating more fractures on its tough hide. From this second strike, Dojin learned something crucial. This boss's hide was far tougher than the Shadow Vipers he'd faced earlier. This was a much greater challenge. Its defenses were too solid to be broken with a single strike. The tables had turned, forcing him to rethink his strategy. In his original state, the sword god would have crushed this beast in a heartbeat. But then, something caught his eye, the sword of a fallen warrior who had lost their life to this very boss. Now, you'll see why they call him the sword god, not the fist god. Even though the blade was battered and worn from its last fight, Dojin still took it in his grasp. He believed the sword's true power is only revealed in the hands of a worthy master. With that conviction, and the sword now in hand, he advanced on the colossal serpent. The creature tensed, then lunged once more with terrifying speed. Dojin responded by launching himself into the air. He hovered there, striking an impossibly cool pose, and made a prideful declaration. He told the monster it should feel honored to be destroyed by him, using his full power with a sword. Even with a blade that looked like scrap metal, this guy was truly insane. With just a few swings, he unleashed a flurry of blinding sword strikes. The serpent's body was instantly diced into pieces, leaving nothing intact. The serious battle came to an almost comical end as the snake collapsed in a heap, and as for Dojin's sword, it crumbled into dust. Fortunately, he'd finished the beast off while it was still struggling for its life. With the boss finally defeated, Dojin had a brilliant idea, one that few main characters ever think of. He broke off one of the serpent's fangs, believing that if properly forged, it would make for an excellent sword material. He considered it his prize for the expedition and finally left the gate. When he stepped out, the sky was already filled with stars. He hadn't realized he'd been inside for so long, but after that experience, he was more determined than ever to restore his powers to their peak condition. At the same time, he was secretly relieved that his old comrades hadn't witnessed his current weakened state. It would have been humiliating. After the hunt, Dojin headed to an appraisal center to sell the mana stones he collected. Ahead of him, another hero was trying to sell a massive pile of mana stones, but the greedy clerk was treating the guy like dirt. He bluntly announced that the commission fee would be 40%. Even the naive-looking hero could tell something was off. The hero immediately questioned the rate, insisting he was just a regular person. But the clerk just repeated the same old script he uses on everyone. He explained that 40% was the lowest rate compared to other appraisal shops, while the official gate center charged a whopping 50%, not including tax. According to him, it was a fantastic deal since heroes could still make a killing. In the end, the other hero reluctantly accepted the payout. Without another word of complaint, the hero's concern shifted, his eyes locking onto the employee's bruised and swollen face. It was almost pathetic. The man was still sticking to his old script, even with a busted-up face. He put on a show, claiming some psycho had annihilated the guards and left him like this. The The hero listened, silently concluding this was the clerk's own fault for hiring such low-level grunts for protection. In this world, rank isn't everything. Real-world combat skill is what truly separates the weak from the strong. The ranking system was just an illusion, a fabricated ladder updated periodically just to maintain some semblance of order. He even pointed out the massive gap between desk jockeys guarding a counter and the true heroes who risked their lives out on the battlefield. But despite the serious lecture, the clerk just wanted him to shut his mouth and get lost. The hero finally left, but not before offering to help if the man ever needed it. At that exact moment, Dojin entered, brushing past the hero without a single glance. His ice-cold stare instantly froze the air in the room. The clerk's eyes widened in terror. A panicked finger shot out as he shrieked, "That's him. He's the psycho who caused all this. He's the one who did this to my face." The hero turned back, his interest immediately piqued. His eyes scanned Dojin's tall and lean physique with a hint of admiration. But the accusation made him suspicious. Was Dojin just another powerhouse abusing his strength to bully ordinary civilians? Even with only one side of the story, the situation had just become far more interesting. A triumphant smirk spread across the clerk's face. He knew this man was a veteran hero, active for 7 years with powerful connections all over the city. If Dojin laid a finger on him, he could use those connections to make his life a living hell. But Dojin didn't even care. He just shot a cold glance over his shoulder and told the veteran to get lost. The blatant disrespect was a direct provocation. It was as if Dojin was trying to prove he was the villain. He then nonchalantly asked the hero if he was there for revenge. A flash of rage crossed the hero's face, but his experience told him one crucial truth: fighting another hero was incredibly foolish. It almost always ended in death, a fatality rate even higher than when fighting monsters. Remembering this grim reality, he calmed himself, turned, and walked away, leaving the clerk completely speechless. Dojin then faced the appraiser, a sly grin on his face. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Before the clerk could speak, Dojin slammed a bag on the counter, spilling out a hoard of high-grade magic stones that made everyone gasp. From the employee's point of view, just who in the world was this monster? He quickly calculated their value, a staggering 150 million. It was a fortune. But to Dojin, it was a paltry sum for a single day's hunt. When he asked for his money, the clerk reminded him that they had to deduct their commission. Dojin's eyes narrowed dangerously, but then he recalled their agreement was only a 1% cut. His expression softened as he told the clerk to hurry up and process the payment. Inside the appraiser's twisted mind, however, a storm of pure fury was brewing. He imagined himself pummeling Dojin for his unbelievable arrogance, but it was all just a fleeting fantasy. In reality, all he could do was grit his teeth and take it. As an excuse, he claimed such a large sum required approval from his superior. Without missing a beat, Dojin slammed his fist on the table. "Then call your superior right now," he growled. "I want that approval immediately." Trembling under the intense pressure, the clerk scrambled for the phone, whispering to his boss on the internal line to try and smooth things over. But before the situation could de-escalate, Dojin snatched the phone, yelling into the receiver, "I don't have all day. Authorize the payment right now." The boss on the other end clearly wanted no trouble. He reluctantly agreed but asked for the phone to be returned to his employee. A knowing smirk played on Dojin's lips. He pretended to hand the phone back, but instead, he hurled it against the wall, shattering it into a million pieces. Perhaps it was an accident, or perhaps it was perfectly intentional. The employee stared at the wreckage, his entire body shaking uncontrollably. Dojin didn't seem to care. "Now, go prepare the money," he commanded coldly. "It's already been approved." And just like that, countless bags of cash were quickly packed and prepared for this massive transaction. In the end, the clerk was left completely broken, an empty shell both physically and mentally. You might feel a shred of pity for him, but remember, this man is a con artist who regularly steals over half the earnings from heroes risking their lives. He is true scum. 10 minutes later, his boss stormed into the shop, furious that he couldn't get through on the phone. The moment the employee saw his boss, he threw in the towel, demanding to quit on the spot. The boss's eyes scanned the room, landing on the shattered phone embedded in the wall. One look was all it took for him to understand what had happened. Pulling out his own phone, he dialed a familiar name. "Hyun, get over here now. We have an out-of-control hero that needs to be dealt with." And then, Hyun-Jan appeared, a striking young woman with glorious pink and purple hair that shimmered like a sunset. A wave of excitement rippled through the crowd as they recognized her. It was Hyun-Jan, a celebrity hero admired by thousands. Her combat outfit was on another level. She strode into the shop with an air of absolute confidence, every step demanding the attention of everyone present. The moment she appeared, an unnerving silence fell over the entire room. Hyun-Jan offered the receptionist a smile that was both polite and terrifying. "Hello," she said smoothly. "I'm here at my uncle's request." Whispers instantly erupted. She was, after all, one of the nation's 4 legendary S-rank heroes. Rumor had it she was the boss's niece, and to everyone's shock, Hyun-Jan herself confirmed it. Yes, my uncle sent me. I heard there was a hero getting a little overexcited. Her curiosity piqued, the stylish hero sat down, ready to hear the full story. The scene then cuts to our main character, his body a chiseled masterpiece of raw muscle. Dojin was deep in meditation under the midday sun, sweat dripping from his perfectly sculpted physique. Despite hunting monsters all day, the rewards were pitifully small, and he was starting to worry about his future. Right now, his main goal was to reach a level where he could solo S-rank gates. That meant reclaiming the full extent of his original power. No more games. It was time for intense training, but Dojin's greatest challenge in this world was its incredibly low mana density. No matter how hard he tried, at his current absorption rate, it would take at least 3 years to even get close to his former strength. And that's if everything went perfectly. Another option was to invest in more powerful equipment. But tragically, even the worst pieces cost hundreds of millions, a total waste of money. Suddenly, an icy chill shot down his spine. He sensed something incredibly dangerous approaching. His eyes darted towards Uni, and his expression hardened. In a flash, he launched forward, scooping the little girl into his arms. "Everyone get inside, now!" Dojan roared, slamming the door shut the second they were through. His grandmother rushed over in a panic. "What is it, dear? What's happening?" The ground began to shake violently, rattling the entire house to its foundations. An earthquake, his grandmother trembled. Uni burst into tears, clinging tightly to his arm in terror. But Dojin knew. This was no ordinary earthquake. It was a sharp, violent energy flooding the very air around them. A spatial rift. A gate had just opened directly above their roof. Without a second thought, he commanded, "Stay inside the house. Do not come out." Pushing his speed to the absolute limit, Dojin shot straight towards the rift. The last thing he heard before plunging inside was the desperate cries of his grandmother and Uni calling his name. The scene shifts to the headquarters of the Soul Hero Association. A piercing alarm blared. A gate had unexpectedly materialized in the skies over Com. It was the first breach in 63 days of peace. Knowing the White Lion team was closest, the manager immediately ordered them to be contacted, mobilizing any nearby heroes for an emergency response. But when he saw the gate's exact coordinates, his face went pale. My God. It's opened directly on top of a residential house. This was a nightmare scenario, even for the most seasoned veterans. If a civilian enters a rift, death is almost certain. Worse, the rift would instantly close, preventing anyone else from following. And if the person inside dies, 10 days later, a devastating wave of monsters would erupt from that spot, spreading across the entire region. It would unleash chaos and destruction, turning the surrounding lands into a disaster zone and threatening the safety of all of Soon. The manager desperately asked who had entered the rift. They quickly confirmed it was a man named Dojin, the resident of that very house. According to his grandmother, Dojin had charged into the rift without hesitation, solely to protect his family. With this information, they concluded he wasn't a professional hero. This made the situation even more dire. A normal person had virtually zero chance of returning from a rift alive. A wave of despair and helplessness washed over the entire staff. There was absolutely nothing they could do. In the next scene, Dojin's stepmother, Hong Hai-do, is seen in a furious rage after hearing that he had awakened. She simply couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her assistant reported that while Dojin hadn't officially registered with the Hero Association, it was confirmed that he did indeed awaken during the recent gate incident. This sent her into a fury. Kang Chae-yu was supposed to eliminate Dojin, but instead, the fool had somehow made his target even stronger. In her rage, she slammed her hand on the desk, screaming, "Why couldn't those idiots just finish the job? They took my money for a complete failure." She snarled at Manager Lai before firing off a threatening message to Kang. It read that if Chi-On-yu didn't kill Dojin himself, he would have to pay her back 10 times the amount he received. But the next piece of news from her assistant shocked her even more. A rift had just appeared above Dojin's house, and he had gone inside. This meant his chances of survival were next to none. A wicked smile spread across Hong Hai-do's face, delighted by the thought of Dojin dying inside the rift. For the first time, a strange and unsettling calm came over her. She then told her assistant to keep monitoring the situation until they had more information. Back with Dojin, he had just set foot inside the rift's dimension. To his utter astonishment, it was a forest, an exact replica of the Pharaoh's forest from his memories, down to the smallest detail. Even the dense magical energy in the air felt just as familiar as it did back then. Walking silently down the old, familiar path, Dojin smiled as the magnificent World Tree came into view right before his eyes. The World Tree, the source of the purest mana. It stood as a divine, sacred pillar, the very structure that brought balance to the world. But the old world fell the moment the tree was set ablaze, twisting the flow of mana for all eternity. Yet here, inside this dimensional rift, the tree remained untouched as if frozen in time. Unsure of how this was possible, Dojin knew one thing for certain. This was his chance to reclaim the power he had lost. As he meditated beneath its branches, basking in the incredible flow of mana, he felt his strength returning, bit by bit, like a refreshing spring coursing through his veins. Dojin could feel his power growing more distinct with every passing moment. For 3 whole days he remained in a trance, forgetting food, water, and all worldly needs. For 10 full days he focused only on his breathing, becoming one with nature. But on the 10th night, his tranquility was shattered. Bizarre creatures known as the Bina materialized from the shadows. Their goal was simple, to burn the world tree and repeat the tragedy of the past. But this time, Dojin was here to stop them. The frenzied beasts charged forward, ready to strike. Dojin inwardly sighed. If only he had his water element sword, this fight would be so much easier. The fiery monsters roared, closing the distance. But now, Dojin's power was completely restored. With pure mana surging through his body, he didn't need a weapon. He had become the weapon. His bare hands, now vessels of absolute power, were more than enough. He sent one of the monsters flying. With a single, devastating strike, its companion froze, stunned by the terrifying power it had just witnessed. The technique was called mana release. It wasn't telekinesis, but an explosive burst of raw energy, a purely destructive blow. It had been ages since he'd unleashed his power like this. For so long, his mana reserves had been critically low. But the Bina horde showed no signs of stopping. They retaliated, firing concentrated energy blasts from their maws. Pulsating beams of light, like deadly lasers, shot straight for him. Yet Dojin remained utterly calm, his expression as serene as a still lake. The immense mana shrouding his body was more than enough to nullify any damage from their pathetic attacks. He advanced on the monsters step by step, his entire being blazing with a spiritual fire. Finally, he whispered, "I can protect the world tree." He was ready to relax and savor this moment. But the ugly beasts tried to fire another blast. In a flash, Dojin grabbed 2 of them by the head. With absolute strength, he forced their jaws shut. He sealed them, trapping the energy within. With nowhere to go, the power imploded violently. In an instant, their heads detonated, leaving behind nothing but headless, charred corpses. The massive bodies shriveled away, as if consumed by a sacred flame. And on the scorched earth, 2 rare mana stones rolled free. But that was only 2 down, with so many more left to go. A wide grin spread across Dojin's face. His heart pounded with excitement as he felt a new power awaken, the eternal flame. With a smile of pure satisfaction, he danced through the battlefield, a whirlwind of destruction. He tore through the horde, collecting a mountain of mana stones. The one-sided massacre continued, until not a single monster remained. This time, Dojin had truly hit the jackpot. Beyond the countless mana stones, he found a small, coin-like object, or perhaps a seed, glowing with a brilliant golden light. This was the special item known as the Eternal Flame. As he picked it up, a warm energy pulsed from it into the palm of his hand. With this, he could reclaim even more of his lost power. He crushed the coin, and a mystical flame erupted, engulfing his entire body. He handled the Eternal Flame with a playful confidence, as if it were a mere toy. Normally, the best strategy would be to keep absorbing mana from the world tree, but his body had already reached its physical limit. The only option left was to absorb this flame. The moment he did, his body underwent a complete transformation. His mana converted into the fire element, an intense inferno raging within every single cell. The sheer heat radiating from him was so intense, the very ground began to crack. In his past life, he never bothered absorbing this item. He never even gave the Eternal Flame a second thought. But now, it was an absolute necessity. If he ever hoped to reach the pinnacle of power, it took at least 10 minutes to fully absorb each flame. Luckily, he had collected a huge stash, and his goal was to absorb every single one. Meanwhile, the appearance of the rift, it had quickly captured the attention of the public and the media. Reporters and journalists swarmed the scene, while agents from the Hero Association secured the perimeter. A man named Kong Yu was furious that someone had dared to enter the rift unauthorized. Doesn't Kong Yu kind of look like a character from Solo Leveling, guys? Ha ha, maybe just with a neater haircut. Nearby, another figure, Kim Hyeon Yu, with his striking blue hair, seemed to understand Dojin's desire to save his sister. But Seon Yu wasn't buying that excuse for a second. He saw Dojin as nothing but a greedy fool, who recklessly dove into a rift without a second thought. In Seon Yu's eyes, there are far more important things in life to protect. If Dojin were to die a normal death, it would be one thing. But if he falls inside that rift, it will become ground zero for a monster outbreak, a true catastrophe. Hyeon-yu sought guidance from Zuma, the head of the association, but the only answer he received was to stick to the established protocol. Hyeon-yu remained skeptical, questioning the sudden surge of rifts appearing all over the globe in places like the U.S., China, Switzerland, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. This global outbreak was precisely why Zuma was struggling to manage the sheer number of rifts, and yet some nations had already gotten the situation under control, making Korea's predicament feel even more dire. Public outrage was boiling over, furious that the entire nation faced disaster because of one man. Seon-yu wanted nothing more than to storm in and beat Dojin to a pulp. He practically prayed the rift would just swallow the guy whole. Meanwhile, 28 days had passed since the massive purple gate first appeared. That was also how long Dojin had been inside the fissure, forcing the association to classify the threat as a level 1 incident. To protect his privacy, Dojin's identity remained a secret, known to the public only by the designation Civilian S. But while the world remained in the dark, the head of a loan shark syndicate had already connected the dots and uncovered the truth. His trusted assistant quickly confirmed the reports, solidifying the details of Dojin's involvement. Kim Eun-gu, currently Chairman Jang's right-hand man, expressed his curiosity about Dojin's chances of survival. Would he even come back in one piece? The assistant calculated that a normal person's odds were less than a 1% chance of survival, but calling Dojin normal just made Chairman Jang burst out laughing. After all, this was the same normal person who had put his goons in the hospital for weeks. From the world's perspective, they had severely underestimated what a mere civilian who dared to enter a rift was capable of. Now, Chairman Jang was far more interested in a different question. What were the survival odds for an awakened being in the same situation? His assistant noted the key factor would be the hero's actual rank, something impossible to determine without complete information. Even within their own organization, SOB, they knew that combat prowess and survival skills were two entirely different beasts. And inside a rift, everything becomes infinitely more complex. But one thing was certain, the scumbag Chairman Jang hadn't changed a bit. He claimed he would protect Dojin's family, but not out of the goodness of his heart. He was the lowest form of scum, planning to harvest their organs for sale if Dojin didn't return. And even if Dojin did make it back alive, Jang would just saddle him with the entire crushing debt. The man was a true parasite, a blood-sucking leech in human form. The scene then shifts to the majestic sight of the World Tree. Here, Dojin was immersed in a period of insane, frantic training. His body was now overflowing with fire mana. He lost all track of time, continuing to hone his skills by absorbing hundreds of fire stones. With this immense reserve of fire mana, Dojin could now freely wield and command the flames as he pleased. As a natural side effect, his resistance to fire had also skyrocketed. Comparing himself to who he was before, Dojin knew that when it came to the fire attribute, he had evolved, taking a giant leap toward true mastery. He embraced the World Tree in an emotional moment, grateful for how it always appeared to help him in his darkest hours. In his past life and now in this one, Dojin was eternally grateful for everything the tree had given him. As for the mana stones he collected, he skillfully wove a small pouch from vines to carry them. After carefully securing the stones, a realization dawned on Dojin. He might never see the World Tree again. Yet, deep in his heart, he hoped their paths would cross once more someday. And if the tree were ever in danger, he swore he would protect it with his very life. That night, Dojin finally stepped out of the rift. He emerged completely unharmed, without a single scratch. Luckily, he didn't sense anyone else's presence nearby. It seemed everyone had assumed he was dead, and were now just waiting for the inevitable monster wave to erupt. However, he suddenly detected a powerful presence close by. Without a moment's hesitation, Dojin shot off to find its source. In an instant, he came face to face with two agents. One looked incredibly irritated, the other perfectly calm. It was Hyeon-yu and Seon-yu. One glance at their uniforms told Dojin everything. They were from the association. If they caught him, things would get extremely complicated. To create a diversion, Dojin summoned a blazing fireball and launched it into the sky with a powerful throw. The fiery projectile soared over a nearby building, erupting in a deafening explosion that shook the entire district. Hearing the destructive sound, Hyeon-yu and Seon-yu snapped to high alert. Realizing it was a fire, they immediately raced toward the flames. Arriving at the scene, they found a crowd of people frozen in terror. Seon-yu yelled out in shock, "What in the world is happening here?" Meanwhile, Dojin was inwardly impressed by the precision of his fire skill, thinking to himself that this power would be a massive advantage from now on. But when they arrived, they were met with an unbelievable sight. The rift's connection to their world had completely vanished. Meanwhile, Dojin slipped away to his next destination, completely unimpeded. By the next morning, the news was everywhere. The rift that terrorized the Mapo district for a month was gone. Officially, it vanished just 29 days after Dojin walked inside. This proved the Hero Association's fears of a monster wave were completely unfounded. For now, they had zero leads. They launched an investigation into the rift's sudden disappearance, but they also hit a dead end trying to solve a mysterious fire. A fire that ignited at a junkyard right as the rift vanished. This led most people to a single, grim conclusion. Dojin was dead. Nothing more than a casualty of his own reckless gamble. But no one knew he was hiding among them, silently observing. He watched the public's conflicting opinions. Some pitied the young boy who lost his life. But for Dojin, the rift's closure was a source of agonizing sorrow. It meant he could no longer communicate with the World Tree. But even without its protection, there was still one thing in this life he was sworn to protect. And that brings us to the headquarters of HCS. Inside the building, a party was underway. The fools were celebrating Dojin's death, confident they could finally eliminate his grandmother and his little sister, Uni. At the center of it all was Director Trang, a man infamous for bleeding people dry. A real bastard, he shamelessly suggested they let Uni grow up a bit more, before using her for his own filthy desires. But as they talked, lost in their vile discussion, a familiar voice cut through the air, demanding to see the person in charge. The scene cuts, showing Director Trang humming to himself. He was satisfied, believing that Dojin was out of the picture for good. His assistant ran through the day's schedule, which was surprisingly light. There was only a lunch meeting with another CEO. Hearing this, Trang was ecstatic. He could party all night at Madame Kang's club, just his usual brand of meaningless pleasure, but everything shattered the moment he entered the building and headed for the stairs. Before him was a scene of pure carnage. His underlings were thrown about like rag dolls, their blood painting the walls, and the one responsible was none other than the man he thought was dead. Dojin grabbed Director Trang, slammed him to the floor, and ordered the filth to crawl back to him. He coldly commanded him to crawl like a dog. The order made the powerful director tremble, his breath catching in his throat. Dojin strode forward like a true conqueror and sat in the chair that once belonged to Trang, taking complete control of the room. He repeated his command to the stunned director, who couldn't process the sheer humiliation. Left with no other choice, he began to crawl. Dojin's next command was even more cruel. Bark. You are nothing more than an animal. The clear, cold order made Trang whimper in shame. It took several seconds for a pathetic sound to escape his lips, but Dojin wasn't satisfied. He made him bark again and again, forcing everyone to listen. He was made to grovel under their contemptuous gaze, and absolute disgust. The man who once sat at the very top was now dragged down, made lower than human, just as he had done to so many others. Dojin coldly remarked that scum like Trang only pretend to be loyal before they inevitably betray you, the first chance they get. Looking down on him, Dojin declared that he'd met countless pathetic worms just like this in his lifetime. In desperation, Trang begged for his life, promising to be a loyal dog if he was spared. But Dojin was tired of such cheap pleas. His response was a vicious slap that sent Trang reeling, coughing up blood on the spot. His assistant could only watch, frozen in terror. Then, Dojin called his name, appointing him as the new leader of the company. He warned him to stay away from trash like Trang to avoid betrayal. Then came the cold, simple order. Kill Director Trang. The new leader was given full authority, but the task was too much for a man who only knew how to bow and obey. He frantically refused, apologizing, explaining that Trang had powerful connections. If Dojin took over, there would be serious trouble. On Trang's behalf, he begged one last time for his life. Dojin, tired of wasting his breath, suggested they just roll up the body in a barrel and dump it in the deep sea, like they'd done to countless others. His men clearly didn't dare obey, so Dojin threatened them. If they didn't listen, he would personally throw every last one of them into a monster gate as food. Hearing that, Director Trang completely broke. He begged through his tears, promising to serve Dojin for eternity. For a moment, Dojin actually hesitated. He could kill Trang right here and end all his problems. But he realized that in this life, something within him had changed. He admitted to himself that he had grown softer than the ruthless monster he used to be. And so, this time, he offered mercy, extending a hand for one final chance. Director Trang grabbed his hand, vowing unconditional service. But something was wrong. His hand began to burn, as if it were engulfed in flames. Dojin may have become softer, but his cruelty was very much alive. Staring into his eyes, Dojin reminded him that this was his true, final chance. Then, Dojin decisively tore Director Trang's arm clean off, without a shred of hesitation. The arm was scorched beyond recognition, nothing but a pile of mangled, charred flesh. With the meeting concluded, he coldly turned his back and walked away. He walked away, ignoring the chairman's agonizing screams. But Dojin left one final, chilling warning. If anyone ever dared to touch his family again, he would personally drag every single one of them to hell. From now on, their only mission was to protect his family for the rest of their lives. That was the only fitting punishment for traitors. Officially, the hunter known as Sin was just a footnote in history, another soul lost to the rift. In reality, he was casually enjoying a meal at a nearby McDonald's. The government, the Hero Association, and the media had already written him off as old news. They assumed any normal person who entered that rift was already dead. Even if he reappeared and claimed to be alive, it's doubtful anyone would believe him. Besides, revealing himself after conquering a rift alone would only bring a mountain of unnecessary trouble. For now, Jiang Xia was acting like an obedient dog, helping him find a more suitable home. This left Dojin free to enjoy a moment of peace, finally treating his little sister to a proper fast food meal. He told Yan about their plan to move to a better neighborhood, and her face lit up with pure joy. Now, Uni could finally go to kindergarten like all the other kids and prepare for elementary school next year. However, the moment school was mentioned, a shadow fell over her happy expression. Dojin immediately felt a sense of unease. He could slaughter monsters without a second thought, but comforting a child was an entirely different battlefield. He softened his voice as Yan timidly confessed that the other children always teased her for being an orphan. Hearing her heartbreaking story, a sharp pain pierced the heart of the battle-hardened warrior. If his sister didn't want to see those cruel kids, that was fine. They would all pay for their words eventually. When she realized she wouldn't have to go back to kindergarten and get bullied, Yan jumped up and down with excitement. Dojin had already decided. He would enroll his sister in a prestigious private academy, where no one would ever dare look down on her again. That night, Dojin discovered that Kim Eon-gu had secretly moved his grandmother and Uni to a cheap motel while he was trapped inside the rift. The man in glasses nearly broke his back, bowing an apology, explaining that the motel was owned by the company and completely secure. But Dojin had no energy to argue with his useless subordinates. Instead, he quietly walked into the room, finally able to see his beloved grandmother. Yan launched herself into his arms like an adorable little bear cub. His grandmother's hands trembled as she held his, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank heavens you're alive." At first, the stoic warrior simply stood there, frozen. But as he felt the warmth of his family, a genuine smile spread across his face as he accepted their embrace. Uni loved McDonald's, so the three of them went often. Today, she was curious about her big brother's job as a hero. When he asked if she liked that her brother was a hero, her answer was innocent and direct, no. She said that even though heroes were cool and strong, they always faced danger, fighting terrifying monsters and sometimes losing their lives. To her, the most important thing was that he stay with her and their grandma for a long, long time. For a man like Dojin, who was used to nothing but endless slaughter, having someone genuinely worry for his safety felt new. In his harsh former world, he was the last man standing, fighting creatures beyond imagination and losing everything he held dear. But now, in this second life, the most precious treasures he could ask for were right beside him. Emotions he thought were buried forever were slowly starting to resurface. Maybe, in this world, he could finally live a happy life, a peaceful existence filled with joy and family. But while Dojin dreamed of the future, the Korean Hero Association was descending into chaos. Na Hwang, the founder of the Korean Hero Association and a director of the World Hero Federation, was on edge over the recent rift incident. Or more accurately, its complete and utter disappearance. They had dispatched their best teams to investigate the site, but they came back with absolutely no new leads. This lack of clarity was infuriating, because there was no guarantee that a rift that vanished so suddenly wouldn't reappear just as quickly. His assistant agreed, pointing out that if it were a monster wave, at least, they wouldn't be dealing with a total unknown. The director immediately shot him a look to silence him before his temper flared. Despite his anxiety, he was grateful that no one had been hurt. Na Hwang was one of the 100 most powerful and respected heroes on the planet. The media often speculated that if he ran for president, he would win in a historic landslide. Fortunately, he had zero interest in political power or wealth. The only thing that mattered to him was the safety of the people. He was a true man of justice. No matter how much time it took, he ordered a complete and thorough investigation of the entire rift area. Luckily, the local residents agreed to sell their homes to the association, so there were no obstacles. As a gesture of goodwill, the association paid far above market value to compensate for the disruption. According to a trusted source, multiple rifts had appeared simultaneously in other countries. Clearly, something incredibly unusual was happening. The United States and China had already entered their rift control phases, but among the world powers, the United Kingdom was facing the biggest crisis. While their experienced heroes were sent to handle other rifts, the UK's remaining squad was an absolute disaster. After a month of trying to clear the rift in Great Britain, the entire campaign collapsed in a humiliating failure. The British rift wave had officially begun. And yet, the people of the city continued on with their lives. The world moved on as usual, completely oblivious to the nightmare lurking just around the corner. Amidst the bustling crowds, Dojin moved like a shadow, just another face lost in the sea of people. Today, his destination was his favorite shop in the hero complex. As Dojin pushed through the door, the clerk at the counter instinctively scanned a product and began a greeting, but the words died in his throat the moment he recognized that face. Every hair on the clerk's body stood on end with fear as he faced the black-haired young man. Luckily, the manager was in today, so the clerk wouldn't have to face this ruthless customer alone. The manager quickly folded the newspaper he was reading, lifting his head to look Dojin straight in the eye. His voice was calm but laced with annoyance. This was the kid who'd forced his employee to buy a pile of low-grade magic crystals at an outrageous price. Dojin lazily slung his backpack off, dropping the bag to the floor. With the manager here, this transaction for his crystals would go much faster. The manager thought to himself, another batch of trash crystals. He had zero interest in that kind of petty business. However, Dojin didn't appreciate being rejected when all he wanted was a fair trade. For the manager, or any sane businessman, a 1% fee was simply not worth it. It was better if this kid just left. But Dojin made it clear that refusing this deal would be a mistake the manager would live to regret. Still, the manager waved Dojin away without even glancing at the bag. This was his final warning before things got out of hand. In response, Dojin casually kicked his backpack forward, sending its entire contents scattering across the tiled floor. As seasoned crystal merchants, both the clerk and the manager instantly recognized the unusual properties of the stones. It turned out that shabby bag was filled with hero crystals, a legendary treasure that money couldn't buy. Dojin might not be an expert, but even he knew just how valuable this haul was. This was the highest grade merchandise imaginable. Hero crystals were once used by a notorious Mexican drug lord named Casilian in his next-generation drug production line. One night, a lab accident completely changed his life and forced the world to reevaluate the true worth of these stones. Thanks to the hero crystals, Casilian awakened as a true hero. Since then, this type of crystal became a priceless treasure for awakening abilities and enhancing magical power. Such a rare energy source could only be classified as an absolute top-tier product. As a final power move, Dojin ordered them to pack the goods up themselves and turn to leave. The manager's disdainful attitude vanished instantly, replaced by sheer reverence as he personally escorted Dojin to the VIP lounge and offered him refreshments. Meanwhile, the clerk carefully wiped down each and every crystal. Dojin savored the complete reversal of fortune. One second, he was being kicked out, the next he was sipping on a soda. His first demand was a full-value payment, with a fee of only 0.5%. Seeing the manager hesitate, Dojin threatened to call off the deal. In past deals, Dojin accepted a 1% fee, but this time it was lower because he was annoyed. The manager bowed as low as he could, offering the most sincere apology of his life. But Dojin was tired of empty apologies. They could either accept his terms or he would walk. It was that simple. At the counter, the cashier silently cursed Dojin for being a rude and arrogant bastard. Seeing his act had no effect on the young man, the manager began a serious, long-winded presentation on the crystal market and its pricing factors. Dojin didn't bother listening. He finished his drink, stood up, and left his seat, sending the manager into a full-blown panic. Feeling the deal of a lifetime slipping through his fingers, he offered a 9% fee. When that didn't work, he kept bargaining down to 8%, then 7%, 6%, and 5%. At this rate, the shop wouldn't make a single cent of profit. Just as the manager was sinking into despair, Dojin suddenly settled on a 1% fee, saying it was out of respect for their previous deals. The manager wanted to scream, to curse this blatant extortionist, but he couldn't let the merchandise go. Dojin's next words nearly made the manager faint with joy. Besides the bag of hero crystals he brought today, Dojin had about 7 more bags just like it stored safely at home. A contract was brought out immediately, and both parties signed without a moment's hesitation. After a few minutes of processing, a massive sum of 67 billion won, roughly $48 million, flowed into Dojin's bank account. At this rate of earning, the 110 billion won house he was eyeing was no longer a distant dream. However, collecting more hero crystals through normal dimensional gates took far too much time. If he could find a way to move freely within the rift zones, he could hunt for treasure like a man possessed. Just then, while he was staring at his phone screen, a sudden administrative alert was broadcast to the entire population. The government announced a monster wave outbreak in the southern region of the United Kingdom and issued a total ban on all travel to the UK. As he read the news about this serious real-world problem, Dojin immediately lost the mood to tease the shop manager any further. In the past, regardless of which nation or association was in charge, he might have jumped in to seal the rift himself, but he wasn't the same person anymore. Tonight, Dojin was treating his family to a lavish feast. The main course was premium-grade red clay pork. Little Yunyang couldn't stop drooling as the rich marbling of pork and beefs sizzled on the grill. Plate after plate of high-end cuts and an endless array of side dishes were brought to their table without pause. Worried by the menu's staggering prices, the grandmother cautiously asked her grandson if this was really okay. After all, 250,000 won for 100 grams was no small sum. Dojin immediately brushed her worries aside. After their incredibly successful crystal harvest, they could eat as much as they wanted without denting their massive bank account. The first piece of meat melted on Yunyang's tongue, an explosion of savory, buttery flavor from the luxury beef. She eagerly threw more onto the sizzling grill. Meanwhile, her grandmother watched with a mix of joy and alarm. Good heavens, a set of fresh ribs, ribeye, and pork belly was on its way. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined. It was pure insanity. How could 3 people, really more like 2.5, possibly finish all this food? But she was underestimating the appetite of a main character. To ease her anxiety, little Yunyang sweetly encouraged her to try a piece of the expensive meat. Unable to refuse her granddaughter's adorable request, the grandmother gave in. With just one small bite, every worry in her heart vanished as if it had never existed. The family then savored their luxurious dinner, their table filled with laughter and overflowing with happiness. But unbeknownst to them, a captivating woman had just entered the restaurant, turning every head the moment she appeared. The other patrons nearly snapped their necks watching her pass by. The woman walked straight toward Dojin's table and called his name, saying she just wanted a moment of his time. However, before she could state her reason, Dojin cut her off with an icy tone. He made his displeasure clear at being disturbed during a family meal, telling her to come back when they were finished. Hyun-jan, the S-rank hunter, presented her business card, expecting his attitude to change once he saw her name. But contrary to her expectations, Dojin simply continued grilling and eating as if she wasn't even there. Hyun-jan had no choice but to swallow her pride and wait patiently in the restaurant's lobby. For a star like her to be sitting in a common area, she drew every single gaze. Men and women alike couldn't stop sneaking glances. Not only was she ranked 4th among the nation's S-rank heroes, but she was also considered one of the 10 most beautiful heroines in the world. Everyone wondered who on earth could make the great Hyun-jan wait like this. Ignoring the whispers, Hyun-jan replayed their brief encounter. From what she knew, Dojin had only entered his first gate 2 months ago. After surviving it, he was suspected of being an awakened. Though he was presumed dead during the Magic Rift incident, here he was, calmly eating dinner with his family, alive and well. Beyond all the inconsistencies surrounding him, just a single sharp look from Dojin had been enough to put an S-rank hunter like her on high alert. How could a newly awakened reach S-rank in less than 2 months? Even the oil tycoon CM, who poured money into magic power, took 5 months to reach the top. Hyun-jan deduced that Dojin must possess some kind of special, unannounced ability. At last, with their bellies full and spirits high, Dojin, his grandmother, and little Yuni stood up to leave the restaurant. Near the exit, Hyun-jan quickly approached to speak with the mysterious young man. But before she could utter a word, another group suddenly appeared, their arrogant presence dominating the atmosphere. Dojin's eyes turned colder than ever when he saw the man who had just walked in. The smug bastard never expected to see Dojin alive after that deadly trip inside the gate. The man's rage flared as he began cursing, fascinated by Dojin's cockroach-like resilience. Hyun-jan instantly recognized the troublemaker. In a flash, the restaurant's atmosphere became incredibly tense, suffocated by a heavy silence and wary eyes from all sides. Dojin ignored the man's shallow provocations and coldly beckoned him closer. Cheon-yu was stunned to see an S-rank hero speaking so informally with some filthy commoner. Dojin calmly asked Hyun-jan to look after his family for a moment, just long enough to wave down a taxi so they could get home safely. It would be much more convenient to collect an old debt from a stray dog when his loved ones weren't around. Fortunately, Hyun-jan was a sharp young woman who understood the situation. She did as Dojin asked, reassuring the old woman and the little girl that everything would be fine as she waved them goodbye. Though their eyes showed deep concern, Dojin could only stand and watch stiffly as the taxi slowly disappeared from view. The moment the car sped away from the restaurant, the resounding crack of a vicious slap echoed through the entire establishment. With his family gone, Dojin finally dropped his polite facade, delivering a slap the bastard would never forget. His movement was so fast that Cheon-yu didn't even see it coming. He only felt the searing sting on his cheek from the sudden blow. Humiliated by the shameful attack, Cheon-yu gritted his teeth in fury and lunged forward to counterattack. A terrified waiter desperately tried to intervene, fearing a fight between 2 awakened beings would bring the entire restaurant down. But his reasonable advice was met with raw violence. Luckily, the waitress wasn't seriously injured, just shaken from the forceful shove. Dojin remained perfectly calm, ordering all customers and staff to leave for their own safety. The easily provoked Cheon-yu, a man with more muscle than brains, couldn't even manage a decent insult. For that failure, he was punished with another fist to the face. He was completely unguarded, with no chance to avoid it. All he felt was the cold impact of knuckles connecting with his skull. Qian Yu was the very man who had locked the original Dojin inside a dungeon, leaving him to rot. Though he wasn't the direct killer, Dojin's hatred for this scum burned with an unholy fire. Today, Dojin wanted to make things crystal clear, but the thug with a face like a goblin just sneered. He started spilling the truth, revealing that Dojin's wicked stepmother was the mastermind behind everything. Realizing that prying information from this simpleton was easier than he'd imagined, Dojin pulled out his phone, opened the video app, and hit record without hesitation. All he needed was a clear recording of the confession, and his life moving forward would be much smoother. But once again, Qian Yu was enraged by Dojin's shameless audacity. He ground his teeth, pouring all his power into a clenched fist. Screaming insults about Dojin's mother, he lunged forward, consumed by pure rage. He was determined to finish the job he started to kill Dojin right here and now. But his crude, telegraphed attacks were utterly pathetic against Dojin's superior skill. Dojin deflected the punch with a deceptively simple movement, as if the blow had slammed into an invisible, elastic shield. Qian Yu's fist was violently repelled, showing him no mercy. Qian Yu had never faced anything like this before. He had always used raw power to crush anyone in his path, but this opponent was so far beyond his comprehension, it shattered his entire reality. He was suddenly thrown backward, his body staggering as if caught in a storm. Dojin watched him stumble like a predator toying with its helpless prey. The sickening sound of knuckles meeting skull echoed again and again through the empty restaurant. Meanwhile, the terrified waitress fumbled to call the police, but before she could press dial, a small, gentle hand took the phone from her. With a radiant smile, a woman named John reassured her that she would handle everything and that the police would not be necessary. The server breathed a sigh of relief, seeing a friendly face in the middle of the chaos. All the while, a relentless storm of blows rained down on Qian Yu, leaving him no room to even catch his breath. That bastard was supposedly a B-rank hero, and at that level, almost no one should be able to make him look so utterly pathetic. Judging by this one-sided beatdown, Dojin had to be at least an A-ranker, but even so, the fight was a complete slaughter. Before things went too far, Dojan calmly asked Dojin to pause. She was worried that if the beating continued any longer, Kang Qian Yu might actually die. Heeding her words, Dojin dropped the goon's limp body to the floor and casually wiped his hands. Seeing the intense hatred between the two, John asked Dojin what his history was with Qian Yu. Even if he didn't have the full picture yet, Dojin knew more than enough to make this scumbag pay for his crimes. John warned him that Qian Yu was connected to Kang Pil, a powerful S-rank hero. But Dojin already knew that, and it didn't bother him in the slightest. John had never met anyone so reckless, so utterly insane. This guy seemed to have zero concern for the consequences of provoking a top-tier ranker. John explained that Kang Pil was fiercely protective of his good-for-nothing cousin. The trouble here would undoubtedly reach that monster's ears, and then blood would be spilled. Dojin just scoffed at her concern. He was the last person on Earth who would ever be afraid of a mere S-rank hero. What annoyed him more was that John now knew far too much about his personal life. The trash had been taken care of. Now, Dojin's resentment shifted to the nosy S-ranker. Face to face, the wild young man stared her down, but she showed no signs of fear. John wasn't the type to be easily intimidated. She wouldn't back down from a simple threatening gaze. Changing the subject, John apologized for her sudden arrival and then calmly explained her reason for visiting. Her uncle had sent her to speak with him. After hearing about the pouch of magic crystals Dojin had sold, John made it clear she wanted to purchase his entire remaining stock. She was prepared to pay any price to get them. Dojin warned her that his goods weren't cheap, since he had many more priceless treasures in his possession. But John simply smiled, confidently stating that the wealth of a veteran S-rank hero was beyond a normal person's wildest imagination. Dojin didn't object to the sale, but he had one small condition before they made a deal. For someone of John's status, it should be a trivial request. At the same time, in another part of the city, the sound of expensive liquor bottles shattering echoed across a luxurious room. Dojin's wicked stepmother was flying into a rage over the shocking news. Her stepson, who she thought was long dead, was still alive, crawling back like a cockroach. Her subordinate had sworn that the boy had died in that dimensional fissure, but now rumors of his survival were spreading like wildfire. One could hardly blame her bald assistant, since the Hero Association itself had confirmed Dojin's death, but his stepmother was in no mood for excuses. She demanded action. To make matters worse, news that Dojin had just defeated Kang Qian Yu had reached her. At this point, there was no doubt. Dojin knew who was behind the assassination attempt. At the thought of being implicated, her face went pale. It wasn't Dojin she feared, but the sheer inconvenience of the scandal. If her father or husband discovered her shady dealings, she could probably hide them. But if word leaked to the press, the corporation's stock price would plummet, She immediately gave the order to get control of the media. If word got out, Toop and the W Group would sever their contracts and advertising deals. In response, her team deployed a full-scale damage control operation. Seeing her lackeys still had some fight left in them, the woman felt a flicker of relief. But Director Lai whispered a grave warning. No matter how well they covered their tracks, this was a temporary fix at best. He proposed a plan to end this headache for good by exploiting a connection to Kang Cheon-woo's relative, a man named Kang Yeon-peo. So notorious, even the stepmother knew his name. In the world of heroes, Cheon-woo was considered bottom-tier trash, but everyone knew he was close to his powerful cousin. In truth, Cheon-woo was just a pawn doing Yeon-peo's dirty work. Neither of them was playing with a full deck. If Cheon-woo got busted by the cops or exposed by the media, the S-ranker Yeon-peo's pristine reputation would be dragged through the mud. And Yeon-peo was already making moves to handle the crisis. The stepmother decided she had to meet Yeon-peo as soon as possible. On top of that, the mad dog Jang Seop from HCS Capital had openly sided with the opposition. He was protecting Dojin's family, so she demanded a prosecutor on the line immediately. Traitors had to pay a steep price. The next morning, a team of heroes stepped into one of South Korea's 37 rift zones. Only 5 of those zones had been converted into safe gates. The rest were cleared according to the Hero Association's schedule. Today, Joan led the team into the rift with her S-rank ID. Her rank gave her virtually unrestricted access to every gate. Among the heroes clad in flashy equipment, one young man in a simple hoodie stood out. Joan had selected Dojin for this temporary party. Raiding with an S-ranker was a rare opportunity, and the team was buzzing with excitement. Joan claimed she just wanted a light workout, but in reality, she had arranged this so Dojin could legally enter the restricted rift zone. Dojin had agreed to sell his remaining mana crystals to Joan at market price, as long as she got him into a high-level rift to earn some cash. Rifts were teeming with treasure, but to walk into such a dangerous place just for profit, without a shred of fear, it was insane. For Joan, just getting the crystals was enough. After a few minutes in a dark tunnel, the group emerged into a forest shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Unable to restrain her curiosity, Inju started grilling Joan about the mysterious guy she brought along. Joan casually replied that he was an acquaintance, but no one believed her. Inju guessed he was Joan's boyfriend. Annoyed by the endless questions, she revealed a fraction of the truth. The man was here because she owed him a favor, and it's not every day an S-ranker is indebted to someone. While the group was busy chatting, no one noticed the ominous sign appearing in the sky. A colossal shadow blotted out the sun, making everyone look up. A creature with the form of a monstrous bird was circling, preparing to attack. It was the Arc Guild. Joan's team reacted instantly, drawing their weapons and moving into combat positions. Their first encounter was with the legendary monster, the Groxy. As a veteran raider, Joan took command and barked out concise orders. Dojin was assigned to defense. So he, aim for its legs first, she yelled. But before she could finish her commands, a figure blurred past them like a lightning bolt, leaving everyone behind. With a single, decisive leap, he instantly closed the distance with the flying beast. Dojin completely ignored the team's plan, deciding to face the monster bird head-on, all by himself. The Arc Guild and the other heroes stared, their mouths hanging open at the spectacle. They had never witnessed anyone act with such reckless audacity. Power surged into his fist as Dojin prepared to unleash his opening attack with his full strength. Meanwhile, Guildmaster Inju could only sigh bitterly at their terrible luck. To run into such a troublesome enemy right after entering the gate. While everyone else was still scrambling into formation, Dojin calmly tossed his backpack aside. As Joan shouted orders, he shot forward like a bullet, launching into the air like a tempest. A single jump was enough to completely neutralize the Groxy's aerial advantage. Dojin dominated the battlefield, his energy blazing around him like an inferno. The monstrous bird wasn't fast enough to react, let alone defend itself. It took the full force of his punch directly to its beak. The monster plummeted to the ground, while Dojin hovered for a moment among the clouds, a poetic and absolute reversal of positions. Dojin landed gracefully in front of the team without a single bead of sweat on his forehead. As the Groxy lay dying, the imprint of his fist was clearly visible on its cheek, undeniable proof of his overwhelming power. The members of ARC were speechless. Even the S-ranker Joan was completely stunned, but they then witnessed his sheer ruthlessness firsthand. Dojin didn't stop there. He slowly lifted his foot and stomped down hard on the monster's head, again and again, until nothing was left but a pulpy mess. Some found it unnecessarily brutal, but killing a Groxy required that exact kind of devastating force. The sound of shattering bones and splattering blood sent a chill down the entire team's spine. Inju now truly wanted to know who Dojin was, but even Joan couldn't give a clear answer. She only knew that Dojin was incredibly powerful. In fact, to call him powerful felt like a massive understatement. Very few heroes in the world could have done what he just did. Killing a Groxy with a single punch was something most people would think impossible. Inju tried to downplay his achievement by mentioning her sister, an exceptional hero in her own right. Even so, Joan couldn't shake her astonishment. Before her stood a true hidden master. She watched the fight without daring to blink, searing Dojin's decisiveness and terrifying strength into her memory. Her curiosity ignited, she turned to Inju and announced a sudden change in plans. For now, Dojin and I will push toward the center. The rest of you stay on the outskirts. Joan walked over to Dojin, who was already carving up the Groxy's corpse for materials. Before she could speak, he said at first, I don't share loot with people who don't contribute. Luckily, Joan wasn't interested in a few measly crystal fragments. She wanted to propose they venture deeper into the gate to a place truly worthy of his power. With a grin, Dojin nodded, his excitement impossible to hide. John, who knew the gate's layout, took the lead, while Dojin simply followed close behind. Without warning, she shot forward, moving so fast the air cracked like a whip. Dojin watched her silhouette vanish over the horizon. Then, hoisting his backpack, he launched himself forward. Maintaining a dizzying pace without effort, she kept glancing back, checking if Dojin could keep up. Seeing no sign of him, she relaxed, thinking she'd overdone it. She was just about to slow down. But in that exact moment, Dojin materialized right beside her, asking casually, Can we maybe go a little faster? The question shattered John's concentration, and she nearly stumbled in shock. This was a feeling she had never experienced before. No one had ever matched her speed in a race. She was ranked in the top 2 fastest in the entire country, but it seemed the rankings needed an update. A few seconds later, Dojin stopped in the middle of the road, teasing that she was slower than he expected, even though John had been showing off at full speed. As she gasped for breath, Dojin's eyes turned to the horizon, where a magnificent spectacle was unfolding. Before them stood a colossal mountain range that pierced the clouds. When John asked what was hiding within the mountains, Dojin's expression turned dead serious. He told her it was the lair of the boss monster, a beast known as Casilian. He explained that Casilian was a gargantuan creature, over 20 meters tall, a hybrid of a dragon and an ancient dinosaur. The mere thought of facing it was terrifying to John. To deal with Casilian, you typically need at least 3 combat-specialized S-rank heroes, and even then, survival was just a possibility. But Dojin knew that Casilian could drop a legendary grade menace stone, a true treasure, a rank just below the absolute highest in the magic system. For a prize like that, he refused to let it slip away. John protested the reckless plan, but Dojin was blunt. With or without her, he was going to fight that dragon. John fell silent, watching him charge forward at an impossible speed. He headed straight for the mountain to conquer the beast. Though she knew it was madness, she felt she had no choice but to follow him, straight into insanity. Something dark and dangerous awaited them both in the boss monster's den. Dojin's overwhelming confidence was baffling, daring to face a monster that could challenge 3 S-rank heroes. This alone sent a shockwave through John's heart. But what shocked her even more was that when they arrived, Kokashes was already lying dead at her feet. When had the fight even ended? How could she have missed what happened? Dojin casually pulled his knife from the monster's corpse, leaving John utterly speechless. The disbelief on her face said it all. This monster wasn't the kind you could defeat easily. She brought up the famous hero, Parky Jion. He had built his reputation hunting monsters just like Kokashes. Yet, even as an S-ranker, the first time Parky Jion faced Kokashes, he brought 30 A-rank heroes for support. But despite their caution, every single A-rank hero was slaughtered. Only Parky Jion survived, and he was on the brink of death. He later sought revenge, returning with another S-rank hero and 100 A-rank heroes. It was practically a mini-army. The battle that followed was a bloody war. They focused on destroying Kokash's wings to ground it. Then, they overwhelmed it with a relentless barrage of attacks. The scene brought to mind a famous debate, 100 men versus a single gorilla. If I were a betting man, my money would be on the humans. And they were right. Kokashes was finally defeated, but only a few heroes survived. The rest were mercilessly wiped out. The losses were so devastating that Park Hee-jeon's guild, the Sweet Life, still hadn't recovered after 3 years. And yet, someone as unassuming as Dojin had taken down Kokashes so effortlessly. John couldn't wrap her head around it. Even when he teased that she wouldn't get any stones for just shadowboxing, John was still stunned by the sheer absurdity of the man before her. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she never would have believed this insane outcome. The terrifying Kokashes was annihilated by a single blow from Dojin. He successfully harvested a gorgeous mana stone from the dragon's body. After admiring it for a moment, Dojin said he no longer needed a guide. He could handle things from here on his own. He refused to take the dragon's claws or fangs, showing no interest in them. Then he turned his back, flatly rejecting John's offer, leaving her so stunned she couldn't even speak. She was frozen to the spot. In contrast, Dojin focused on collecting mana stones, even generously telling John to keep all the remaining monster parts as her fee. John looked at the dragon's corpse and decided she didn't need to take anything. Night was beginning to fall. The rest of the group couldn't believe their eyes. They were speechless, watching Dojin collect 3 full bags of magic stones. It was an unbelievable sight, something not even an A-rank hero would dare dream of. For a guild to harvest all those materials would take at least 20 hours. For materials of such high quality, even 3 days might not be enough. They all wondered about Dojin's true identity. All eyes turned to Hyang John, the one who had brought him here. But she was just as clueless as they were. Even the A-rank guild master couldn't figure out how Dojin defeated Kakashes, especially without any special equipment. This feat alone was enough to place Dojin at the very top of Korea's hero rankings. He was completely unrivaled. He was born different. One A-rank hero even thought he might be the strongest person in the world. At his current level, she was absolutely dumbfounded. Dojin, looking exhausted, returned with his bags full of loot. In just one day of monster hunting, he had collected all of that. The group knew no one would ever believe them. Dojin's superhuman strength was the very definition of absurd. They were ordered to never speak a word of this. The most crucial step was securing the authorities. John approached Dojin, striking up a casual conversation. From a distance, they looked just like a couple flirting. At least, that's what their teammates wanted to believe. Everyone tried to convince themselves they were witnessing a new power couple in the making. The team figured only Dojin could stand shoulder to shoulder with John, considering the monstrous power they both wielded. But the A-rank guild masters soon realized they weren't the perfect match she'd imagined. In fact, it looked like they were in the middle of a heated argument. She couldn't believe anyone had the nerve to raise their voice to John, the woman everyone feared. But what truly stunned her was when Dojin simply handed her a bag and walked away in silence. Not another word. His actions left the guild master completely speechless. As for the loot Dojin had collected, John confirmed his suspicions. Dojin was terrified that if the world found out he'd single-handedly defeated Kachis, he'd become an overnight sensation. That was the last thing he wanted. So he pushed all the credit and the responsibility onto John. Hearing his decision, the others were struck completely dumb. But ironically, the old saying holds true. The truth always finds a way to the surface. And though John didn't say it out loud, she found herself growing deeply curious about this mysterious young man. Something inside her had been stirred. The scene shifts to another location, where we get a closer look at a famous S-rank hunter. His name is Park Hae-jeon. He attacks a punching bag with savage intensity, like a wild beast uncaged. His assistant watches, stunned by the sheer ferocity of his training. It's clear that an untamed rage burns within Hae-jeon. He is the guild master of the Sweet Life Guild. His assistant gently advises him to conserve his strength, reminding him that patience is key in these trying times. Hae-jeon agrees, believing that anyone who underestimates him will eventually face ruin. One day, they will all look up to him as the strongest guild master alive. His assistant then brings up Hae-jeon's legendary streak of coach's takedowns. It's what sets him apart from the rest. She declares that his name will go down in history as the hero who defeated Kachis with the smallest party ever assembled. Funnily enough, she adds that his record is unlikely to ever be broken, unless Stephen Hawking himself rises from the grave to pull off a miracle. The guild master swells with pride, boasting about his accomplishments. Even so, the guild has suffered heavy losses over the past 3 years. It's not the powerhouse it once was. But what makes Hae-jeon grin is knowing that right now, he's the only one left who can take down a coachess. A fact his one-eyed attendant readily confirms. As they discuss the world of high-ranking heroes, the scene cuts to the office of Kang Yeon-gyo. He's reviewing a report detailing Dojin's chaotic night with Cheon-yu and how he utterly annihilated his own cousin. Even though Cheon-yu planned to trap Dojin in the dimensional gate forever, an unforeseen incident triggered his awakening. And the mastermind behind this assassination attempt was none other than director Hong Hee-jin, one of the wealthiest individuals in all of South Korea. To Yeon-gyo, it was a mystery why she would target Dojin, until he discovered a shocking truth. Dojin was her illegitimate son. He was welcomed into the family at age 7. But the moment her biological child was born, he was cast out. Yeon-gyo let out a dark chuckle. He realizes that even the filthy rich can't escape being thrown away like trash. As for the assassination fee, the price for the hit was 3 billion won, a paltry sum in Yeon-gyo's eyes. But what's worse, after his clash with Dojin, Cheon-yu is now on the brink of death, his body covered in severe burns, crippling injuries, loss of sight, a lifetime of disability. It highlighted a level of cruelty in Dojin that even Yeon-gyo had to respect. Still, Yeon-gyo says with a twisted amusement, if it had been him, he would have chopped off Cheon-yu's limbs. and crushed his skull on the spot. Everyone initially thought he was the saner of the two cousins, but it's now clear he's even more unhinged. When the location of the battle is brought up, they mention John was present and somehow extracted Dojin. Youngyo's interest is suddenly piqued. He demands they find out more. He still can't figure out what makes Dojin so special. Unfortunately, even his trusted assistant knows nothing about the secret meeting between John and Dojin. The official case file on the incident was closed long ago. "Get the hell out of my sight." Youngyo snatches the attendant's wrist, roaring at him. He orders him to investigate their relationship, no matter the cost. He suspects some kind of secret deal was made between them. The assistant, terrified by this violent outburst, scrambles to begin the investigation without a second's delay. Youngyo explodes in a fit of rage, smashing everything in sight. His fury is uncontrollable. Yet, through the haze of anger, he's clear-headed enough to know Hong Hee-jin's people will be coming for him. They'll want him to finish the job that Cheon-yu failed. The thought of being the one to succeed brings a twisted sense of relief. Hong Hee-jin is obscenely wealthy, with a fortune that rivals Andrew Tate's. Getting a massive payday from her will be easy for a man as greedy as him. Now, let's return to Dojin. He had just returned from the chaotic raid. After today's ordeal, he felt incredibly lucky he chose to enter the fissure instead of the major gate. That gate was meant for professional hunters. But things weren't that simple. He might have to maintain a long-term connection with John just to stay off the radar. He recalled their conversation. She had been blunt, telling him that people would question who really defeated the Kachis. If his identity were ever exposed, the fallout would be catastrophic. John's plan was simple. She would hold onto the proof of the kill. If Dojin ever decided he wanted the fame, she would be ready to reveal the truth. In response, he tossed the bag of loot to her, telling her to keep everything, which meant he now needed to find another way to access the fissures. He didn't want to rely on John and bring trouble to her doorstep. Regardless, for tonight, he could rest easy in a luxury home, specially arranged for him by the Trang shop. But as he reached the front door, he froze. Lined up neatly on the floor were several pairs of unfamiliar shoes. Their presence could only mean one thing: uninvited guests. Stepping inside, he was met with the sight of several men in sharp suits, standing stone-faced in the middle of his living room. They were speaking with his family, as if this were a formal meeting, not a sudden home invasion. The man in charge looked like a darker version of Nanami from Jujutsu Kaisen. His eyes were as sharp as a hawk hunting its prey. Just then, Yuan rushed out to meet him. His sister threw her arms around him in relief. But Dojin's confusion only deepened. A man stepped forward, his voice sharp and official. "I'm Prosecutor Park Cheon-yang." He wasted no time, laying out a connection to someone named Trang Seo. Citing their close relationship, he slapped Dojin with an emergency arrest warrant. The charge? Involvement in a loan sharking ring, run by the corrupt CEO of HCS Capital. Sunlight streamed into the prosecutor's office, filling it with light. But the air was heavy, thick with crushing pressure. Cuffed to a chair, Dojin's sharp gaze swept across the room. He was scanning every corner, fighting to keep his composure while searching for an escape. Just then, Prosecutor Park Cheon-yang entered, speaking into his phone. His voice was dripping with deference. Yes, Boss Lee, please don't worry. Huang Tae-sub and Seo-in know their place. Thank you for your concern about my daughter studying abroad. And please, give my warmest regards to Director Hong Hee-jin. Later, in front of a monitor, Xiaonyang watched the footage of the cuffed Dojin. A smug, cruel smile spread across his face. "You know why I became a prosecutor?" he boomed, his laughter echoing. "It's to wipe scum like you off the face of the earth." A moment later, Xiaonyang stormed into the interrogation room, slamming a stack of papers onto the table. The sound was a declaration of war. His face twisted with contempt as he pointed right at Dojin and began his interrogation. "What have you ever accomplished in your pathetic life? With these charges alone, you're looking at 15 years behind bars." He held up a sheet of paper, his voice dripping with triumph. "We have all the proof we need, all thanks to the testimony of Huang Xiao." Dojin's expression hardened, but he remained silent, his gaze like ice. Seeing this, Cheon-yang's patience snapped, and he roared, "Look at this punk. You think I'm making this up?" Suddenly, Dojin spoke. His voice was low, but every word cut like a knife. "The man pulling the strings is Hong Hai-du, isn't it?" The name struck Cheon-yang like a bolt of lightning. His face flushed with rage as he slammed the table and roared, "Hong Hai-du? Who the hell is that? What the hell are you talking about?" Dojin's brow furrowed. He realized then that Huang Xiao's faction had been completely crushed. Dojin decided to stay silent, not wanting to escalate the situation, but the tension in the room only grew thicker. Cheon-yang tapped his foot, trying to regain his composure, but his voice was laced with menace. "Listen here, punk. You think a prosecutor of the Republic of Korea is someone you can mess with? Your life is over, you fool." But then, Dojin looked up. His gaze was so cold, it felt like a blade piercing straight through him. Cheon-young shuddered, breaking out in a cold sweat. The prosecutor shot to his feet, sputtering incoherently. Through gritted teeth, he snarled, "You son of a..." Just as Cheon-young raised his hand to strike, the door burst open. An officer called out, "Prosecutor Park, could you step outside for a moment?" The voice of an agent named Un-young echoed from the hall. "Is the machine broken?" Cheon-young demanded, staring at a report. The person opposite him replied calmly, "No, sir. I've double-checked. The machine is working perfectly." The prosecutor scowled. "Then why does the awakening detector register him as a civilian? Does that make any sense? We're talking about Dojin." The agent could only look on helplessly. I'm not sure, sir. Perhaps the intel about his awakening was wrong." Cheon-young muttered to himself, deep in thought. But this data came from the T group. There's no way it could be a mistake. And he even knew Hong Haidu's name. Just who was this guy? Back in the interrogation room, Dojin let out a heavy sigh as a fire of pure rage ignited in his eyes. "Now I get it," he muttered, his voice laced with acid. "This is why they call Korean prosecutors hunting dogs. Maybe I should just burn it all to the ground." As that dangerous thought crossed his mind, the door swung open. A woman named Jean entered, looking slightly bewildered. "What are you doing in a place like this?" she asked. Seeing her, Dojin finally relaxed, leaning back in his chair. "Honestly, I have no idea." Jean frowned, her tone turning serious. "Look, I know you're in a tough spot, but if you use your power here, the consequences will be catastrophic." Dojin smirked. "And you're here to help me." Jean crossed her arms, meeting his gaze directly. "Not exactly. But when I see an innocent man being framed, I have a duty to correct that injustice." Hearing this, Dojin actually let out a small laugh. For a moment, a flicker of warmth appeared in his eyes. Jean continued, unfazed. "The False Awakened Association will handle the investigation. They're already monitoring awakening licenses and the new rift in Mason." But Dojin didn't seem to care, quickly changing the subject. "What about my family?" he pressed. Jean waved a hand, annoyed. "What do you think I am, your personal assistant? Why should I have to worry about them?" But when his gaze turned sharp as ice, she grew flustered and looked away. Before leaving, her voice softened. "They're safe. Don't worry." Dojin let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you. I won't forget this." Jean blushed slightly, glancing away. "Whatever. Just try to be patient. I'll take care of this as quickly as I can." But she didn't try to prove Dojin's innocence directly. Instead, she went after Cheon-young himself. She exposed his history of bribery and corruption, getting him completely stripped of his position. After a fair and proper investigation, Dojin was officially cleared of all charges. He still faced punishment for possessing a false awakening license, but thanks to Jean's protection, he only got a suspended sentence. Later, as the two of them were driving, a news report crackled to life. Right now, in the United Kingdom, an unidentified monster is attacking civilians. The creature resembles a 1.5-meter tall praying mantis, with 4 eyes and incredible jumping power. Dojin's voice cut in, cold and certain. "It's a Masion." Jean stared at him, stunned. "What? How could you possibly know that?" "That name is classified information, known only to the association." Seeing his completely unfazed expression, her suspicion deepened. "Macions," he continued, "can be destroyed using an extract from red flower ants." Dojin's voice was eerily calm. "To humans, it's harmless. But to a Macion, it's a potent, paralyzing toxin." John fell silent, his brows knitting together. "Dojin, just what are you?" He offered no reply, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The car screeched to a sudden halt. Fed up with the silence, John exploded. "Are you even listening to me?" After a long moment, Dojin's lips finally parted, his eyes sharp with a terrifying threat. "What if I decided to kill you right now?" The main character's stepmother sat in a private room, her face a mask of tension, barely containing the rage threatening to erupt. Across from her, a bald-headed man stood in silence for a long moment before finally speaking. "That is the situation." She remained seated, her expression seething with a fury that felt ready to explode. "Why is Hunjan now Hunjuan?" She spat out each word. The bald man replied, his voice laced with confusion. "That's not yet clear." She had no idea what their relationship with Jane was, nor could she fathom how they knew each other. At his words, her eyes blazed, her suppressed anger finally breaking free. "That damn brat. What in the world is going on?" She slammed her fist on the table and shot to her feet, roaring with fury. "What do you mean Dojin isn't a hero? You explicitly told me that boy had awakened." The bald man began to sweat, stammering. "About that, it's true that he appeared to have awakened. It's possible he possesses some kind of power that can deceive the hero detection system, but that's all just speculation. Hearing this, she shrieked in frustration. Contact Kang Yo. 20 billion? No, I'll pay 30 billion. Get it done now, she commanded decisively. The scene shifts to Kang Yo, who was ready to press his advantage. 30 billion won't be enough. Tell her to double the price. The man in the suit beside him was stunned. Double? Sir, isn't that excessive? Kang Yo let out a cold laugh. You don't understand. To a woman like her, I'm the only choice she has, he continued, his voice dripping with confidence. And when this is all over, 60 billion will be nothing to her. Especially now that Hyun-jun is involved. If I have to face an S-ranker, that's the absolute minimum. His subordinate tilted his head and muttered. Hyun-jun is certainly a dangerous opponent. In that instant, a terrifying crash echoed through the room. Boom. Kang Yo shot to his feet, clicking his tongue with pure contempt. Do you really think all S-rankers are the same? Give me 20 minutes, and I'll put Hyun-jun down for good. The subordinate paled, bowing his head quickly. Why, yes, sir. A smug smirk played on Kang Yo's lips. Any response from the association? His subordinate nodded. Yes. They said they cannot increase the payout due to the current conditions in the United Kingdom. The association publicly announced that they are carefully selecting which heroes to dispatch. He paced the room, muttering, Damn it, now I can't even complain that the pay is too low. Those bastards at the association are the real gangsters here. When do we leave? His subordinate replied instantly. The flight is in 3 days. They've scheduled a coordinated transfer with the Japanese heroes. Kang Yo raised an eyebrow and nodded. Oh, Japan. Good. I was planning to visit Takashi anyway. He gazed out the high-rise window, his eyes burning with ambition. The Makin. A new monster with no discovered weaknesses. If I'm the one to find its weak point, my own value will skyrocket. Ha ha ha. The scene shifts to the skies above Cambridge, United Kingdom, where lightning rips the air apart, purple bolts screaming across the pitch-black sky. In the city's heart, a grotesque, colossal creature appeared, its legs like iron pillars. Panicked crowds scattered, a black wave of humanity flooding the cobblestone streets. The creature stood imposingly in the center of the square, its body towering, its eyes glowing a brilliant yellow, its body covered in steel-black scales. A team of heroes had already formed a line against the monster. The leader, wielding a great sword, let out a war cry. The warriors behind him gripped their weapons, their entire bodies trembling from the creature's immense, unseen pressure. In a flash of lightning, amidst their ragged breaths, a single thought echoed. Can we possibly survive this? Just then, the giant creature let out a blood-curdling shriek, its colossal arms swinging down like the Grim Reaper's scythe. Boom! The ground shattered. The heroes on the front line were sent flying by the shockwave as the remaining warriors charged forward in a counterattack. A female sorceress conjured a violet barrier, magical light enveloping her allies. After the combined assault, the monster collapsed, beheaded and lifeless. But it wasn't over. Before them stood an army of identical monsters, their vicious yellow eyes glowing menacingly. The horrifying scene spread across Cambridge, sending a chill through everyone watching. Buildings were engulfed in raging infernos, red flames reflecting against the dark sky. The heroes of the United Kingdom threw everything they had into stopping the monster's advance to the south, but with no intel on their enemy, they had no strategy. There was only creeping fear and powerlessness as the final defensive line in Cambridge collapsed. Flames devoured every street, and thick black smoke rose to choke the sky. The horde of steel-armored monsters marched south unopposed. They were now less than 60 kilometers from the capital city of London. Their bodies were like statues of war gods, a cold light emanating from their gray metallic hides. Suddenly, rows of monsters collapsed, falling lifeless to the ground, leaving the heroes stunned. From the sky above came the unmistakable sound of helicopter rotors. A voice echoes from below. A team of heroes peers out from the helicopter, their faces etched with tension as one of them yells, My God, it's real. Shockwaves ripple through the team. Among them, a woman with piercing, cold eyes, is Han-jan. The man beside her speaks up. Han-jan was right. The red ant essence is actually working. That Macon. It's not going to last much longer. One of the squad members thinks to himself, She's incredible. Just unbelievable. How could she possibly have known this? But Han-jan remains silent. After all, it was Dojin who taught her everything. She simply ignores their stunned gazes. She turns, her voice firm and decisive. All right, it's time to end this. Two of her teammates respond instantly, their eyes gleaming with excitement, not a hint of doubt. The entire squad leaps from the helicopter, plunging downward like arrows slicing through the sky. Han-jan leads the charge, her right hand drawing a gleaming silver dagger. A cold glint of light flashes from the blade. The scene shifts to London's International Airport, where a plane has just touched down. Outside the terminal, a horde of reporters lies in wait. Cameras are rolling, and the sounds of whispers and rushing footsteps fill the arrival hall. Whoa, look at all these reporters, a team member whispers. Then again, it's Hunjan we're talking about. A man with dark hair adds, she was the star of the entire UK operation. She discovered the Macon's weakness and became a true hero. Someone else chimes in excitedly. I heard the British royal family is even planning to knight her. Just then, a voice shouts out, there she is. It's her. Every camera instantly swivels in one direction. Hunjan walks toward the exit, pulling her suitcase. A blinding storm of camera flashes erupts. Reporters shout over each other, Miss Hunjan, please, look this way. How did you find the Macon's weak point? Hunjan says nothing, her cold gaze sweeping over the frenzied crowd. Just behind her, Kang Yo appears, a smug smirk on his face. A reporter calls out, Kang Yo, could you share a few words with us? We heard you captured the most Macon on this mission. The news report continues. The 200-person team, including the hero Hunjan, has returned home. The efforts of Korea's heroes have saved Great Britain from disaster. The key to hunting the Macon was spraying red ant essence into the air. This tactic was first proposed by Hunjan herself. The interview plays out on a nearby screen. Standing below, our main character watches everything unfold. His eyes, cold and filled with rage, are locked on the screen. He grits his teeth, a single name echoing in his mind like thunder. Kang Yo. In a quiet cafe, warm yellow light spills over wooden tables. Dojin is sitting across from Hunjan. She places several expensive-looking gift bags on the table. These are for you, she says softly. Dojin looks up, his brow furrowed in surprise. Gifts? For what? Hunjan smiles, pointing to each bag. This is for Uniang and your grandmother, and this one is for you. You can open them when you get home. No need to open them here. Dojin's gaze drifts to the neatly folded clothes inside one bag, high-quality fabric and perfect stitching. He murmurs to himself, this all looks really expensive. Hunjan replies calmly, consider it a small token of thanks for your help. Because of you, I've become a true hero. Compared to everything I've gained, these gifts are nothing. I could even buy you a car if you wanted. Dojin replies coolly, if I need one, I'll let you know. It's nice to finally be able to help you for a change. Hunjan narrows her eyes, speaking slowly. Even if I were to ask how you knew the Macon's weakness, you wouldn't tell me, would you? Dojin's gaze is as cold and unmoving as ice. Why would I have any reason to tell you? Hunjan stares at him, her expression conflicted, but she doesn't press him. She sighs. So, what are your plans now? She thinks to herself, it's not like I expect some grand answer like for world peace from him. But if he decides to go after Hong Hyu or Kang Yo, it's guaranteed to cause chaos. I have to stop him before it's too late. Dojin tilts his head, his eyes unreadable. First, I think I'll buy a house. Hunjan is taken aback. The place you're living in now, you're renting? The scene cuts to a lavish mansion, where the rich and powerful are gathered for a pool party surrounded by wine and women. Hazy purple lights pulse to the beat of loud music. Kang Yo is in his element, with a girl on each arm. He thinks to himself, Hunjan, she's changed so much. She knew the Macon's weakness, but she's hiding how she found out. She's definitely hiding something. He recalls their conversation on the plane. Forget about the Macon for a second. What's the deal between you and Dojin? Hunjan had answered coldly. What are you talking about? He pressed on, raising an eyebrow. You derailed an entire prosecution just to save that guy. You were there when he took down that Macon, weren't you? Hunjan had brushed back her hair, her gaze indifferent. Kang Treo started it. You remember the failed assassination attempt inside the gate, don't you? And even on that day, he was the one who picked the fight. Kang Yo had smirked. Ha, that guy was an idiot. Getting himself killed over pocket change. What a moron. But still, he was my cousin, you know? Long story short, I have a reason to get my revenge on Dojin. Hunjan's sharp eyes revealed nothing as she replied nonchalantly. Do whatever you want. I'm not getting involved in any of this. Kang Yo had frowned, surprised by her detached response. Humph. I thought they were close. Guess I was wrong. Back on the plane, Hunjan had leaned back, closing her eyes. Besides, it's not like he needs my help. Her words echo in Kang Yo's mind now. He repeats them to himself, a sinister smirk spreading across his face. So, an intervention is needed? That's what she said, after all. He thought, that bastard Dojin is definitely hiding something. The scene shifts to Erbury, England, a land utterly devastated by the recent monster wave. The British Hero Association scrambles to gather magic stones before the second wave arrives, deploying a massive number of heroes into the rift. A gatekeeper watches on with regret. What a shame. If we had the red ant extract, even D-ranks like us could have taken down Marson. His partner nodded. You're right. If we'd stopped the wave sooner, we could have harvested a whole mountain of magic stones. But once a monster wave erupts from a rift, it can never be converted into a stable gate again. They say the second wave will feature a different monster, not the Macken. The other replied, yeah, and just thinking about it gives me chills. No one knows what will crawl out this time. A few nations have been wiped off the map just like that. Suddenly, one of the guards looked up, his brow furrowed. I feel like someone is coming out of the rift. The raid team from earlier, but it's only been 5 hours. The other waved him off. Come on, just focus on guard duty. The moment news about magic stones gets out, civilians will be swarming this place. Just then, the rift exploded with a blinding light. Red fractures shot out like lightning, and the guards panicked, their faces draining of all color. From the crimson depths, a colossal shadow stepped forth. Its body was pure muscle, its skin as black as steel. Its eyes glowed from within a helmet of purple energy, and each heavy footstep made the very ground tremble. What is that thing? That's no hero. One guard screamed, his voice trembling. Look at the clothes, the scars. Contact headquarters, now. But before he could reach for his device, a flash of blue light erupted. A hand like black metal shot forward, and the guard was lifted by an invisible force before he could even react. What the hell is this? His partner drew his weapon and charged, screaming, you bastard. But he was instantly swatted to the ground like an insect. The attacker strode forward coldly, rings of glowing blue mana radiating from his body. He whispered, his voice dry and filled with contempt, too weak. He clenched his fist, and the light flared once more. The two gatekeepers were crushed like ants. Blood sprayed through the air as their agonizing screams echoed across the area. He raised his hand as dark purple energy streamed into a device. A number appeared on its screen, 19.26%. He muttered to himself, 15 years have passed in this world, and my power hasn't even recovered to 20%. Did I create a dimensional rift, only for it to be a failure? No. First, I need to increase the mana concentration. As he stepped past the bodies, a survivor whispered, Who? Who in the world are you? The being merely gestured with his arm, and the soldier dissolved into a pulp of blood and gore. He spoke coldly. First, I must cleanse this world of its weak, insect-like inhabitants. The scene cuts to Paju, South Korea. In a lush green field under a clear sky, Dojin walks slowly, a large bag slung over his shoulder. Suddenly, a glint of sharp awareness flashes in his eyes. He stopped, tilting his head, sensing a growing tremor from deep within the earth. In an instant, giant worms burst from the ground, shattering the turf and kicking up massive columns of dust. Dojin stood perfectly still, without a trace of fear. He tilted his head again, sensing their movements. 26 of them. Within a 100-meter radius. Let's see how many of you survive. Flames erupted from the palm of his hand. With a faint smile, he hurled the orb of fire to the ground. The earth cracked apart, scorched black in an instant, as the very land rose up, ready to receive the coming wrath. The flames detonated in a ground-shaking explosion. The monsters, which had appeared less than 3 seconds ago, were utterly annihilated. Dojin observed the gruesome scene with an unchanging expression, as if this were a common occurrence. The corner of his mouth quirked into a faint, detached smile. The scene cuts to a high-rise building in the heart of a modern city. In a quiet office, an older man took a sip of coffee, his voice calm. So, tell me, what kind of person is he? The man who answered wore glasses, his expression serious. He is very difficult to grasp, but he did confirm with his own mouth that he is a hero. The speaker was Min Hong-di, the vice director of the Korean Hero Association. The older man raised an eyebrow. Didn't you say the power scanner couldn't even get a reading on his value? Min Hong-di gave a slight, helpless nod. We still have no explanation for that. President Byuk Chung-chun slammed his hand on the desk in a burst of anger. That insolent brat. When the association asks a question, you answer. But he slowly lowered his hand, his voice softening. Is there anything else? Min Hong-di flipped through a file, shaking his head slightly. Not much. But it all began with that evil conspiracy orchestrated by the hero Kang Chol-woo. After Dojin's counterattack and the fact that he cleared the rift all by himself, the one in Mao. It's clear his power is overwhelming. Even if he crossed some lines, his strength is on a level that nothing can compare to. Byuk Chung-chun crossed his arms, deep in thought. A wild horse that's hard to tame, but also a powerful warhorse. He has requested an official hero license and also asked to waive the procedures because he has a sponsor. The president asked, who is the sponsor? Min Hong-di answered gravely. S-rank hero. Heo-jun. The room fell silent. The two men stared at each other, utterly stunned, as the scene cuts back to Dojin's battle. A smirk played on his lips as he held a brand new S-rank card. He was the 8th person in the history of South Korea to achieve S-rank. Thanks to this license, Dojin could now freely hunt monsters within rift zones. All around him, the mangled corpses of the giant worms lay scattered across the field. Laughter echoed through another meeting room. Ha ha, the moment he got his license, he charged straight into the rift. What a strange one. Min Hongdai nodded in agreement. He's incredibly proactive. You don't see that every day. Baek Sung Chun was stunned. A second-level rift all alone? No guild, no teammates. Is he insane? The room fell silent as the chairman's eyes glinted with cold calculation. Baek Sung Chun, catching his breath, shouted, "If that guy, Sejin, makes it back alive, we must announce him as South Korea's 8th S-rank hero." Min Hongdi objected. Perhaps he doesn't want the attention. We should ask him first. Baek Sung Chun snapped back. This is so frustrating. In these unstable times, isn't a new S-rank hero the perfect way to reassure the public? Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Chairman? The chairman nodded. I understand both sides. I'll meet with the young man myself. The scene cuts to a battlefield deep in a jungle near the rift. Sejin delivers a devastating kick to a massive monster, his eyes sharp with excitement. His hands ignited, and his body spun like a top. A colossal vortex of fire erupted, incinerating all the surrounding monsters to ash. He landed gracefully as a rain of monster corpses fell behind him. Standing on a pile of carcasses, Sejin surveyed the aftermath, sighing softly. That used more mana than I expected. I need to get some new weapons. The scene shifts to the hero complex in Paju, South Korea, at an ordinary-looking smithy. Inside, a muscular blacksmith was glued to his phone. The shop bell jingled. Sejin walked in. Without even a greeting, the owner spoke with pure arrogance. Give me the name of the person who made the reservation. Sejin slammed a heavy cloth bag on the counter, his voice ice cold. I want a weapon crafted from these. The blacksmith glanced at the bag and sneered. If you don't have an appointment, find somewhere else to go. Sejin's voice turned sharp. You're the one who answered the phone, aren't you? The man scoffed. We're busy. Try your luck elsewhere. Without another word, Sejin grabbed the man's collar and lifted him off his feet. Are you the owner? He asked, his voice chilling. Panicked, the man stammered. I'm the owner's son. Sejin tightened his grip. Get your father. I came here because I heard this place had a reputation to uphold. Staring into those frigid eyes, the son helplessly went inside. Dad, a client wants to see you. A rugged old blacksmith emerged. This was Choi Choan, the legendary weaponsmith for heroes. He looked at Sejin and asked curtly, Who sent you here? Sejin replied, Hun. At the mention of that name, both father and son went pale. The air in the shop grew heavy. Sejin opened the bag, pulling out a reddish-brown material and placing it on the table. The moment the old blacksmith saw it, a chill ran down his spine. Father and son drew closer to inspect it, stuttering, This is. The son, seeing his father's pale face, asked, Dad, what is that? His father's voice trembled. This is the fang of a black devourer. It's been so long since I've seen one of these. Sejin then stated his request, forge a long sword. The longer, the better. The old man was bewildered. Longer? You don't understand. With a non-metallic material like this, making it too long will just make it weaker. I'll make 2 standard-sized blades instead. Sejin frowned. Are you admitting you're not skilled enough? Then forge the 2 blades together. I need a longsword, and if you can increase its magic absorption, even better. Faced with Sejin's arrogance, the son yelled, Who do you think you are, making demands like that? My father only crafts weapons that have a minimum mana absorption level of 3. Sejin silently picked up a pre-forged sword. After a quick glance, he judged it. This has to be at least a level 5, right? Then, with a flicker of power, the entire room lit up. In an instant, the sword shattered in his hand like glass. The son was dumbfounded, the father, heartbroken. Sejin dropped the broken hilt, his voice like frost. If this piece of trash is the quality you produce, you should just retire. An oppressive silence filled the room as the 2 blacksmiths stood frozen in fear. The scene changes to a lush green forest where a gigantic monster awakens. It bared its fangs with a snarl, its single, massive red eye snapping open. A terrifying, one-eyed monster, it opened its maw and roared. Sejin appeared, walking leisurely as he thought to himself. As noisy as ever. With a flick of his wrist, flames erupted as he dodged the monster's stomping foot. Before the beast could even register what happened, Sejin closed the distance with lightning speed, sinking his blade deep into its shoulder. It roared in agony, grabbing a nearby tree as veins bulged across its body. But the tree never reached its target. Sejin sliced it in half with a single, decisive strike. With eyes like daggers, he charged, and the monster's bravado instantly turned to fear. In a flash, Sejin was behind it, engulfing its massive body in magical flames. The monster began to regenerate with green energy, its grievous wounds slowly closing. But before it could recover, Seijin lightly touched its back. Boom! The beast's entire body was charred black. It screamed, collapsed, and its head rolled from its shoulders. Seijin stood there without a single scratch, having felled the colossal monster in the blink of an eye. He muttered, maintaining a menace sword for this long is no easy task. A red flame still smoldered on his hand, but his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Seijin bent down, took a cup from his backpack, and placed it on the ground. He uncapped it and filled it with blood from the monster's corpse. His voice was hoarse. To think I had to chase this, Cyclops, all day just for this. The scene shifts to a quiet evening outside the blacksmith's shop. He handed the strange cup to the blacksmith's son. The young man took it, his brow furrowing in confusion. What in the world is this? Seijin replied with a cold indifference. Tell your father this will allow him to fuse the two fangs with ease. With that, he turned to leave. The young blacksmith yelled after him, Hey, you can't just drop this off and walk away. He scratched his head, utterly baffled. What kind of crazy material is this? But his shouts were lost to the city wind, swallowed by the glare of the skyscrapers. Seijin's steady pace never faltered. Seijin's mind raced. The base materials were secured. But to truly elevate its mana absorption to the next level, there was only one path left. Unfortunately, the material he needed was no longer of this world. The scene shifts to a lavish outdoor resort. A silver pool shimmers under the night sky. Suddenly, a phone buzzes to life, the name Seijin glowing on the screen. A beautiful woman, lounging poolside, answers the call. A curious, playful smile touched her lips. Hello? Whatever was said on the other end made her sit up in shock. Huh? What did you just say? Meanwhile, at a bustling pool party, laughter echoed through the air. Sunlight warmed the lounge chairs scattered across the lawn. Yujin, wrapped in a blue and white checkered towel, was relaxing on a sun lounger. Beside her sat Dong Ingu. The two were chatting casually, enjoying the peaceful, sunny day. Yujin spoke up. So, the association decided to dispatch heroes to Brazil? Dong Ingu answered without missing a beat. Yep. It seems both the Brazilian government and our own association are at a complete loss. They're in the process of locking down the entire rift zone now. The monsters in Brazil are vicious, for sure, but they only drop a few low-grade mana stones. The association is offering a hefty reward, so our guild decided to take the job. Dong Ingu then added, and if you're coming, you should bring him along, too. Lately, all the heroes are buzzing about those 5 from the original group of 8 S ranks. He's one of them, isn't he? Yujin froze for a moment. I'm not entirely sure. Dong Ingu just chuckled. There's no way you don't know. The rumor is you two are pretty close. Yujin grew flustered. What are you talking about? Dong Ingu laughed out loud. You're just too cute. Her laughter filled the air, lightening the mood. Dong Ingu teased, don't play innocent with me. I saw you two hunting a occasion all by yourselves. Yujin mumbled, it wasn't a big deal. Fine, whatever. If we're going, let's just go. Dong Ingu's face lit up with a grin. Yes, thank you. Just as the mood seemed settled, Yujin cut in with a doubtful tone. But I'm not so sure he'll agree to come with us. The scene cuts back to the old blacksmith, Cho Guan. He stared intently at the item before him, muttering in disbelief. How is this possible? How did he know this wasn't metal, yet could be smelted and forged with such perfect precision? A flashback to Seijin's confident expression, as if this secret knowledge was a memory from a past life. His gaze held the weight of a technology far beyond this era's comprehension. The old blacksmith pressed him. And how did you know Cyclops' blood could be used like this? Seijin had replied simply, now, I'll have you craft the longest version possible, just as we discussed. Can you make it 180 centimeters? Seijin specified, design it as a two-handed sword, but modify the grip so I can wield it with a single hand. The weight should be around 5 kilograms. Old man Cho Guan raised an eyebrow, a mix of surprise and intrigue on his face, muttering, huh? Since when did this kid learn to speak so politely? I thought he was just some nameless punk, but it turns out he actually has some basic manners. But it wasn't just his attitude. Could this weapon truly be a priceless masterpiece? The blacksmith added, 5 kilograms is incredibly heavy for a one-handed swing, especially if you plan on swinging it repeatedly. Seijin just gave a calm, reassuring smile. Just make it for me. How long will it take? The old man replied it would take at least a month, and the mana absorption rate could reach level 7. Hearing this, Seijin thought to himself, level 7? His eyes sharpened like daggers, and he wondered if a weapon of that level could even handle his true power. A glint of light reflected in his cold eyes as he weighed a critical decision. Finally, he tilted his head, whispering with certainty, just as I thought. I'm going to need that ingredient after all. As he left, his voice was calm and steady. For now, just create the mold. We can handle the mana absorption enhancement process after I return with the final material. Cho Guan watched him go, stunned by the implication. Is he actually going to find that impossible ingredient? A few days later, the sprawling cityscape comes into view. A river winding between its modern towers. A black Rolls-Royce pulls up to a luxurious high-rise. Sujin stood there, exuding an air of quiet confidence. "Thank you," he said softly. "I'll take good care of it." Yujin, dressed in her uniform, raised an eyebrow, her expression a mix of curiosity and shyness. "It's nothing. But do I really seem that insignificant to you? Making me go out and buy a car that costs 1,000,000,000 won." A faint smile played on Sujin's lips. "It's perfectly adequate." Yujin looked down, a blush creeping onto her cheeks, and asked, "So, while you were admiring your new car, what happened with the Hero Association?" Sujin explained, "They threatened to release my personal information to the public. I told them if they proceed, there will be a price to pay." Yujin looked shocked. "A price? But Chairman Nate Wang always prioritizes the greater good." "So it would seem," Sujin stated flatly. "The negotiations failed." Yujin pressed on. "Can't you just try to cooperate with them a little? I'd appreciate it if you consider my position in all this, since I'm the one sponsoring you, Sujin." The car door shut with a solid thud. With a sharp click, Sejin slipped into the driver's seat, leaving a figure frozen outside as silence consumed the space. John was the first to speak, noting that the association was likely overwhelmed, sending agents to the Fisher Zone in Brazil. He suggested, "Once things settle down, you should talk to the president again." But at the mention of that familiar place, Sujin interrupted. "Brazil?" John confirmed. "Yes, Brazil," he continued. "They're saying a part of the Fisher Zone there will be permanently sealed off." They turned to each other, their gazes soft with a hint of romance. Sejin asked, "Are you going too?" Her heart skipped a beat at the sudden question. Flustered, she finally admitted, "I am." Sejin looked directly at her, his eyes firm. "What do you mean by that?" "We go together." The unexpected offer left her stunned, her heart pounding as a blush crept across her cheeks. Meanwhile, Hong Hidu was writhing in agony, his eyes blazing with absolute fury. Opposite him sat the intimidating President Na Tae-wang, his hands clasped together, his eyes glinting in the shadows. Hong Hidu screamed, "What now? How much more could you possibly want?" Na Tae-wang's voice was a low growl, his expression calm. "This is no time to be cheap over a few coins, Director Hong." She shot to her feet, seething with rage. "You've already taken 30 billion and you still dare to ask for more. When the hell are you going to do your job?" "I should have just hired someone else," she spat. "With enough money, there are plenty of killers out there who would do it without asking questions." Na Tae-wang let out a chilling chuckle. Hey. But would anyone else even accept such a request?" He leaned back, looking at Director Hong with pure mockery. "It seems your intelligence network is quite pathetic, isn't it? Here, let me give you a little information for free. Seojin. That name is S-rank, the 8th S-rank hero of South Korea." The room fell silent, as if the entire world now revolved around that name. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she shrieked, "That brute is an S-rank. Are you trying to fool me?" He replied with a mocking tone, "Hey, you don't believe me? That's information I had to pay good money for. If you don't want to listen, then just wait for Sujin to kill you and see how you regret it then." Staring at his back, Hong Hidu quickly stammered, "Wait, hold on. Is Sujin really an S-rank?" The air was thick with tension. Panicked, she screamed, "If he's an S-rank, I can't handle him myself. I'll give you more money. Do whatever it takes. Just get rid of him." A calculating smile spread across Na Tae-wang's face, his eyes flashing. "Money is important, of course. But it would be even better if we became close business partners in the future." Every word was laced with hidden meaning. This was more than a transaction. It was the beginning of a shadow alliance, she added desperately. "Whatever it takes. Please, you must kill him." Her plea was cut short by the sharp ring of a cell phone. Na Tae-wang glanced at his phone and said, "It seems the heavens are smiling upon you, Director Hong Hidu." Confused, she asked, "What do you mean?" He held up the phone. A perfect opportunity to kill Sejin is about to present itself. Against a clear blue sky dotted with fluffy white clouds, an airplane soared past as a document appeared on screen, titled "A True Hero's Profile." The hero's identity was revealed. Next to the image of two mysterious figures, one purple and one black, standing out against a white background. Inside the plane sat a man in a black suit, white shirt, and black tie. Online comments exploded. Jang Si-ho is going to Brazil too. He single-handedly took down the P team and claimed the #1 spot for Reawakeners. That guy can smell money like a demon. Is Brazil paying that much? Park Hee-jin is definitely going for the money too, right? Since the path is completely blocked, he must be broke. Hun is going too. If you become a national hero, you can finally relax. You have to cash in when the tide is high. Hun is so hot. Even Kang Yupo is going. Brazil must be paying a fortune. I heard that if you get a mana stone during this campaign, it's tax-free and you get the full amount. If you find even one mid-tier mana stone, You're set for life. Regarding Dojin, netizens commented, but who is he? Is he a rookie? Do we have to wait for this Brazil mission to see his debut? A user named Deharo Gazer remarked, he's young, probably just tagging along for experience, but his actual skills are probably terrible. So Kang Chan Speedy asserted, even if he's an S rank, that's as good as he'll get. The plane glided through the sky, a moment of peace before everything changed. A somber gaze followed the plane, lost in deep and troubled thought. Night had not yet fallen, but destiny was already taking flight with that plane. A clear blue sky stretched over the city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Skyscrapers stood tall in the morning sun. This was the headquarters of the Brazilian Hero Association. Two men in sharp suits were talking. One reported in a low voice, the South Korean hero team landed at the airport a short time ago. The bearded man's eyes widened in surprise and satisfaction. Oh, that's excellent news. They were the fastest to respond among all the countries we requested help from, he continued. Some of the heroes didn't even stop by their accommodations. They moved out the moment they arrived. That's a nation that gets things done. However, I'm worried the Korean heroes will discover the truth about that. For a fleeting moment, a deep sense of dread flashed in his eyes. The bearded man laced his fingers, his gaze lost on the ceiling. A deep frown creased his brow. No secret can stay buried forever. We have to keep this contained, at least until the operation is over. After a tense silence, the long-haired man finally nodded. I understand. A heavy sigh escaped him, his eyes shadowed with the unspoken fears he was desperately trying to suppress. An image flickered on screen, a body, lifeless on the ground. The man's once powerful frame was now just a cold shell, his face a grim mask of his final battle. This was Maurice, a national hero of Brazil, defeated and killed by an unidentified entity. But it wasn't a monster. The black box data was clear. It wasn't some grotesque beast, but the unmistakable silhouette of a human. It stood within a raging vortex of violet energy, its eyes glowing with a chilling light. The face was so sharp, so cold. It was no longer human. Just what in the hell happened at the rift near Santa Teresa? A human, not a monster, had just killed one of the world's strongest heroes, and this was only the beginning of a terrifying secret yet to be unveiled. In a massive auditorium, the world's heroes gathered for a briefing. A woman sat quietly in the corner, her attention locked on her phone. She texted Dojin, "Where are you? The press conference is starting." Her phone buzzed with a reply. "I had to divert to a destination a bit further out." She frowned, typing back with suspicion. "Further? Where are you talking about?" His reply came back, cold and simple. "Santa Teresa." Her eyes shot wide open in disbelief. "Santa Teresa? You went to the most dangerous rift zone. Alone." On stage, the presentation droned on, oblivious to her rising panic. After a 2-day acclimation period, all heroes will be deployed to their designated rift zones. In front of the luxurious Baumhau Hotel, a yellow taxi pulled up. The woman was about to get in, suitcase in hand, but stopped short when a familiar face appeared. He blocked her path to the taxi. "Where do you think you're going? The official schedule hasn't even started." Without a hint of hesitation, she replied firmly, "I have somewhere I need to be." He frowned in confusion. "And where would that be?" Her eyes flashed with unwavering resolve. "Santa Teresa." She immediately got in the car and drove off, leaving him lost in thought. Santa Teresa. Wasn't that the one place the Brazilian Guild explicitly warned us to stay away from? In a grim, gray forest near the Santa Teresa Rift, pale light washed over the barren, dead earth. The heroes marched forward, led by Dojin in his stark white shirt. The woman finally spoke. "Well, we're here. The least you could do is tell me why you rushed over here." Dojin answered nonchalantly, "I was waiting for you." "Aren't you the one who showed up late?" She shot back with a frown. "I wouldn't have been late if you'd told me beforehand." "Fine, whatever," Dojin said. "Let's just drop it," she pressed on. "Just tell me what you're really after here." Without breaking his stride, Dojin gave a one-word answer. "Blue Croco." She stared ahead, her voice laced with ice. "The Croco? That's it." He shot back. "Do I need another reason?" After a few seconds of silence, she changed tactics. "Dojin, do you realize I'm 3 years older than you?" He didn't even turn around. "And?" She snapped, slightly irritated. "And? You're supposed to show some respect to your senior." Dojin was unfazed. "I am speaking to you formally. You, on the other hand, can feel free to speak casually to me. You want to make things awkward between us? Fine. I'll speak formally too." She winced. "No, that's not what I meant." "I can't believe he's talking to Hunjin like that," another hunter thought. The black-haired man beside him voiced his concern aloud. "Is it really okay to just charge into a rift zone like this?" The brown-haired man reassured him. "Don't worry, we have the hero Hunjin with us. What's there to fear?" The black-haired man frowned. "I know she's strong, but isn't that guy in the lead a total rookie?" The long-haired man just smirked. A rookie. He let out a soft chuckle, resting his weapon on his shoulder with an air of confidence. Not all rookies are created equal. If we're talking about Seijin, he's more like a legendary grade rookie. The other two looked shocked. Is he really that powerful? While the team murmured in the back, Seijin and Hunjun continued their signature style of bickering up front. Their expressions showed neither was willing to back down an inch, but their eyes held no real hostility, as if a special, unspoken bond existed between them. Hunjun turned to Seijin, her gaze a mix of suspicion and worry. Seijin, don't tell me you came here to completely clear this rift zone. He gave her a calm, sideways glance. I'm here for materials. Why would I destroy it for no reason? He added pointedly. You have to make use of every resource you can get. She frowned, the word echoing in her mind. Materials? But before she could press him further, a piercing shriek echoed through the air. The ground trembled as a creature with massive claws dove from above. It descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning. The young man with the shield braced for the surprise attack, planting his feet and pouring in all his strength. The impact was deafening, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. The long-haired man roared, "Snap out of it. Get in formation, now." He gripped his weapon tighter, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos. But as he faced the newly appeared monster, he growled under his breath. Damn it. It's even more terrifying than it looked in the photos. The two heroes behind him were pale with fear. The brown-haired man swallowed nervously, his voice trembling. Wait a second. Isn't this a little too dangerous? The dark-haired man stood paralyzed, his eyes wide, sensing the menacing power of their enemy. A deep voice cut through the tension. Move. Seijin stepped forward, brushing past them decisively, sword in hand as memories flashed through his mind. Old man Chakwan had entrusted him with the blade, warning him that taking the blue Krako's heart with his bare hands would be nearly impossible. I'll lend you my prized sword. Use it to get the materials. Now, on a real battlefield, Seijin lowered his stance. He tightened his grip on the hilt and unleashed a mighty slash, a blow that tore through the air with terrifying power and slammed into the ground. It carved a vortex of dust and debris from the earth. A blinding light flared from the blade, shooting straight towards its target. This was the opening attack of the man they called a legend-class rookie. In a mere instant, the monster's body was riddled with sword marks. It collapsed to the ground, dead in a heartbeat. The long-haired man gasped in sheer disbelief. Just as I'd expected, the two heroes behind him went pale, their eyes bulging. What the hell was that? He's unbelievably strong, they exclaimed in unison, their voices cracking with shock. Before them, on the ground stained with blood and monster corpses, Seijin stood tall, his sword still dripping. As night fell, the group sat around a campfire, exhausted but remaining vigilant of their surroundings. A voice rang out, filled with awe. Did you see that? Seijin took down that blue Krako in a single strike. Another person sitting nearby replied, I can't believe it. You can't even count how many monsters he's defeated alone. It's incredible. The long-haired man whispered, this is a secret, but he took down the sea monster the exact same way. The dark-haired man's eyes widened, unable to believe what he was hearing. He caught that monster bird, too. He's definitely no ordinary hero. John approached Dojin and asked, are you finished with the blue Krako hearts? Dojin simply pointed towards a box and replied, see for yourself. Seeing the box, she wondered what he could possibly be using all those hearts for. Then, her curiosity piqued. She asked, by the way, what kind of meat are you grilling? It doesn't look like beef at all. Dojin replied casually, it's blue crocodile meat, it's edible. You want to try some? She flinched, her face paling as her eyes grew wide with shock. Shouldn't we be rationing our prepared food? Why on earth would we eat something like this? Hearing her, Dojin just kept eating nonchalantly and added, if you don't want any, that's fine. John stared in astonishment, but then she picked up her chopsticks, ready to try it. Seeing this, Dong Inu shouted, hey, John, you're not actually going to eat that thing, are you? John stared at the piece of meat being pulled from the fire, then said, well, he said it was edible. She put the meat in her mouth and began chewing. It was so delicious that she thought to herself, this is actually pretty good. Dong Ingu stared at her, then turned to Dojin. Dojin, what's your secret? How in the world did you manage to seduce John? She's so innocent. She's never even had a boyfriend. She's not the type to just give her heart to any man. What's your secret dating trick to make her eat something like that? A thoughtful look crossed Dojin's face as he mumbled, dating, A flashback appeared. Back in his mid-20s, there was Lady Luenda Lalian's daughter and Lady Mio from the Count G's family. And, finally, my last hope in a ruined world, Veronica. Dong Ingu noticed Dojin spacing out and yelled, hey, are you even listening to me? Dojin replied with absolute confidence, the honey doesn't go looking for the bee. Dong Ingu was completely stunned. He recoiled in horror and screamed, oh my god, That is the single corniest line I have ever heard in my entire life. The scene changes to another location, Sao Paulo. Kang Wai held a glass of wine as his secretary spoke from behind. That's all there is to it. I just can't understand. The campaign hasn't even been officially dispatched, yet they've already brazenly entered the rift. Kang Wai added, "What's more, Dojin, Inju, and Zhujiang's entire Biden Haiyang guild went with him. Are there any profitable monsters near Santarem?" The secretary answered, "Not that I'm aware of, sir. We inquired with our Brazilian contacts, and the response we got was that the place is extremely dangerous. Everything related to that bastard Dojin is completely unpredictable." At that moment, a call came through on his phone. Kang Wai answered it. "Oh, Director Hong. What's the matter?" The person on the other end replied, "Is that bastard Dojin still alive? When are you going to do your job?" Kang Wai's brow furrowed. "Why are you so impatient? Did something happen?" The caller added angrily, "My father must have seen the news about Dojin being in S rank and told me to bring him home." "Oh, so the chairman of T Corporation is getting involved now. Is that why you're so worried?" The voice on the phone grew furious. "This is no time for jokes. What are you going to do?" He smiled confidently. "Dojin will never return from Brazil." Hearing that, the caller's tone brightened immediately. "Now that's an answer I like to hear." Kang Wai added, "If you understand, then hang up, Director Hong." He then turned back to his secretary. "Contact Takashi. Now that I've found a decent partner, I need to make sure things don't disappoint. Tell him Dojin walked right into a secluded area himself, so the job should be much easier." The scene shifts to the forest. Deep within the dense woods, the group pressed onward. Dojin led the way, with a nervous John hurrying to keep pace. "Are you really going into the forest? They say it's filled with dangerous monsters." Dojin simply glanced back and asked, "What kind of monsters?" John broke into a cold sweat. "The lynx." Dojin's eyes narrowed. "A lynx? Huh. So they exist here, too?" Duan asked with curiosity, "You've heard of the lynx before?" He replied with absolute certainty, "Of course I have." John watched him, his face pale with worry as he muttered, "I knew it." Duan held out a small object to him. "I won't try to stop you, but please, wear this." Dojin looked at her, surprised. "Huh? What is this?" In her hand was a small device that looked like an earbud. She looked at him with deadly seriousness. "They're earplugs. If you're mesmerized by the lynx's cry, your mind will be completely paralyzed. You said you knew about them." But Dojin's response was shocking. "I won't need these." John looked at him, totally confused. "What? Hey, you can't underestimate the lynx. The Brazilian Hero Association specifically warned us to be careful of it." As they pushed forward, the sky began to darken. Even as John continued his frantic warnings, a monstrous, red-eyed lynx materialized before them, radiating an aura of absolute danger. The moment they saw the beast, the entire party was paralyzed, their faces contorted with pure terror and shock. Everyone was frozen in place, eyes wide and mouths agape. In a flash, Dong Inu screamed, his voice trembling, "It's the lynx. Cover your ears." Panic ripped through the group as everyone desperately clamped their hands to their heads, faces twisted in fear. Yet Dojin stood perfectly still, his calm gaze locked directly onto the lynx. He didn't show a single shred of fear. From high above, the lynx unleashed a disorienting shriek. The team scrambled in chaos, clutching their heads to fight the mental assault. John looked up in utter disbelief. "Why aren't you covering your ears?" Dojin simply bent down and picked up a rock. He channeled his energy into the stone in his hand and instantly hurled it forward. The projectile shot like a bullet toward the beast above. John and Duan could only stare, their eyes wide with astonishment. The stone hit its mark, and the enraged lynx fled. Dojin immediately drew his sword and gave chase. Inju gasped in amazement. What did he just do? The lynx's scream. It stopped. The two of them hurried to catch up. Before them stood not one, but an entire pack of the demonic beasts. They glared at the humans, their eyes glowing with rage. The two women immediately fell into a defensive stance. Dojin suddenly felt a sharp, ringing pain pierce his mind. A hand quickly covered his eyes as a calm voice explained, "It's not the scream. The thing that paralyzes your mind is the lynx's gaze." He gripped the hilt of his sword, closed his eyes for a moment, and stepped forward. With that, Dojin advanced. He could sense the suffocating atmosphere. So this is the limit, is it? Dojin swung his blade in a brilliant arc, unleashing the band school's swordsmanship. First form, Cura de Milagro. A miracle born from a single point. He unleashed his power with immense force, creating a blazing, crimson fireball. The beasts watched uneasily as the orb of concentrated energy grew larger and larger. A member of the team cried out in shock. What in the world is that technique? It looks incredibly dangerous. Dojin's eyes suddenly blazed with killing intent. His sword swung out, unleashing a violent torrent of fire, forming a brilliant sphere of energy in the dark night. The unsuspecting links that touched it instantly felt an unimaginable heat, which incinerated them all, leaving no chance for escape. The light from the inferno was so blinding that his two companions had to quickly fall back. When the light finally subsided, Dojan stared in utter disbelief. Before Dojin lay nothing but a field of scorched earth. The entire Lynx pack had been completely vaporized, and the foul stench of burnt flesh filled the air. Everyone was too horrified to speak. John muttered in disbelief, "Impossible." From the smoldering ashes, a single, weakened creature managed to rise. Dojin slowly walked towards it, calmly closing the distance with the last lynx. Instantly, its eyes flared with a final act of defiance, but in a flash, his blade struck it down. The lynx's head flew from its body as Dojin stared directly into it. Pathetic. What a useless piece of trash. Still, I'll take these eyes, they might be useful later. With Dojin now leading, the group ventured deeper into the great forest. His companions now looked at him with absolute trust, all their previous doubts erased, because it was obvious that this man possessed both overwhelming strength and responsibility. The people in the back could only gasp in sheer amazement. That's insane. Is he even human? I can't believe it. He's terrifying. This is far beyond a human's level. He might be even stronger than a Sabrian phone class. If you ask me, he could be on par with Cain Lear. Cain Lear? The world's strongest hero? There's no way. With that, they fell silent and followed him into the dangerous territory. From the murky swamp below, creatures known as Andits began to emerge as they sensed the intruders. They turned with contempt, though it's not like an Andit can read the situation. In the next moment, they charged, their massive jaws open wide toward Dojin's group. He immediately moved forward, and a brutal physical blow completely warped the creature's jaw. The punch was so powerful it blew the Andit's head clean off. The body stays, the head goes. But on Dojin's face, there was not a hint of emotion. His icy gaze swept over them, and then his image blurred and vanished. Moving like the Flash, Dojin relentlessly attacked the creatures, and one by one, they met the same grim fate as the first. Stay down. With zero pity, Dojin stomped on the monster's body for good measure. Everyone watching was completely stunned by the display. Soon after, the howls of monsters echoed from the forest, a testament to Dojin's overwhelming and terrifying power. Dojin was practically carrying the entire team. He was a grinding machine, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. After walking for a while, John's curiosity got the better of her. She approached him to ask about his swordsmanship, wondering, "Where did you learn that?" Dojin simply replied with a click of his tongue. Seeing her genuine curiosity, he paused for a moment, then offered, "What, you want to learn?" Her eyes lit up as she asked, "Can I really learn it?" Dojin thought to himself, in this peaceful world, what use would she have for such a skill? Then he said aloud, "Even if you learned it now, when would you ever use it?" Hearing this, John completely misunderstood his meaning and grew furious. "Don't be so condescending," she thought. "I'm an S-rank hero, too," she retorted. "At least I could use it once before I die, right? Or do you just not want to teach me?" Dojin shot her a look, his eyes dead serious. But John was still fuming, glaring back at him with frustration. Seeing his emotionless expression, John crossed her arms and turned away. "Fine. I see how much I mean to you." Watching from behind, Inju had enough of their bickering. She thought to herself, "These two lovebirds." Then she spoke up, cutting through the romantic tension. "All right, let's move through the rift." Everyone heard the order and replied in unison, "Yes, ma'am." With that, they headed towards the rift to teleport. Inju glanced back one last time at the battlefield. Thanks to Dojin, there were 0 casualties. The next time she came near this place, she knew she could clear it even faster. With that thought, Inju turned and stepped into the rift. Just as she passed through, a loud voice boomed, "I'll kill you." Inju immediately recognized the language as Japanese. The voice was dripping with rage. "You dare get in our way?" The voice sounded familiar, so Inju rushed over to see what was happening. She found the lovebirds from before standing face-to-face with Ryoma Takashi, the S-rank hero from the Yakuza and guildmaster of the Empire Guild. He threatened them. "I've been waiting for a chance to finally have some fun with the Fist King, and you dare interfere with my plans? I'm about to smash your face in." Dojin, however, wasn't the least bit intimidated. What an obnoxious group. Hearing his response, John asked in surprise, "You speak Japanese?" Dojin replied, "A little." But in truth, Dojin was a master of the language. Ryoma's killing intent flared as he snarled, "What are you spacing out for, you dogs?" Seeing this, Dojin's teammates quickly moved to intervene before things went too far. "How dare you speak to our guildmaster like that? Get on your knees and apologize, now. Do you have any idea who this is?" Before they could finish, Dojin cut them off. "I don't need to know. Get lost." Ryoma didn't seem scared at all. The two men stood locked in a standoff, a murderous aura radiating from them both. Inju watched quietly from the back. The Empire Guild was the 5th-ranked guild in Japan, notorious for being an unruly mob of thugs with Yakuza origins. No matter how strong Dojin was, this was a fight best avoided. With that thought, she quickly stepped forward to mediate. Everyone, let's just calm down. But Ryoma spat. This is no place for a woman to interfere. That remark struck a nerve with Inju. A woman, you say? As the situation worsened, Ryoma's men started shouting. What are you monkeys babbling about? You dare insult our guild master? You brain-dead idiots. Inju turned back and commanded everyone, silence. It seemed she had managed to control her emotions, introducing herself calmly. I am Inju Dung from the Camellia Guild. It would be better for everyone if we resolved this peacefully. Ryoma couldn't care less. Never heard of your pathetic guild. He continued his vile taunts. What? You need a man? Don't worry, your turn will come. Then, Ryoma grabbed John's arm, pulling her toward him. Dojin moved to pull her back, only to be met with a hard slap from Ryoma, who yelled, "Get lost." The arrogant thug sneered, "I've got something to show you all. I'm going to kill you anyway, so just sit tight and watch." Dojin thought to himself. After enduring Ryoma's provocations time and time again, this deliberate attempt to humiliate him was the final straw. He couldn't hold back any longer. Fine. You asked for it. Dojin sent Ryoma flying with a single, devastating blow. The Yakuza members were so shocked to see their boss go down, they couldn't even react in time to catch him. Dojin declared, "Everyone, back off." He struck first, so this is self-defense. This is a one-on-one duel now. Let's clear out the small fry. Ryoma, staggering to his feet, roared, "All of you, stand down." He ripped off his shirt, revealing a muscular frame pulsing with a furious aura. John looked at him and offered a silent prayer for Dojin. Not for his safety, but for his opponents. Please, just let him stop at killing half of them. Renji, Daigo, and Sager were frozen in place, utterly stunned by the sudden turn of events. On the other side, Inju and John watched in silence. They saw Dojin explode forward like a lightning bolt towards Takashi, who was still on the ground. He brought his foot down, ruthlessly stomping on the man's head. The force of the blow was so immense, Takashi couldn't even scream in pain. Dojin followed up with a powerful kick straight to his stomach, sending him flying backward with incredible force. Takashi was in absolute shock, covering his face as he thought, how can he be this strong? It's impossible. Who is this guy? This is nothing like the rumors I heard. Dojin looked down on him, his eyes completely devoid of warmth, filled with nothing but an icy, chilling void. And Takashi stared right back into that abyss. Dojin's eyes widened in sheer terror. Cursing under his breath, Takashi knew he couldn't stay here a second longer. He spun around, scrambling to escape. But like a bolt of lightning, Dojin appeared before him, cutting off any chance of retreat. Dojin stared him down, his voice a low growl. Who sent you to mess with me? Takashi could only stammer, unable to form a single word. I have a pretty good idea who it was, Dojin continued, reaching a hand toward the man's head. Takashi panicked, begging for his life. Please, please forgive me. Dojin didn't even blink, cutting him off. You want my forgiveness? Never. He slammed his fist into the side of the man's head. Without mercy, Dojin took him down right then and there. Takashi crumpled in pain, powerless to do anything but take the hit. Everyone present stared in a mixture of shock and terror at Dojin's brutal actions. After the blow, Dojin simply dropped him to the ground. He glanced down at the man while idly massaging his own bicep. Inu whispered in shock, I knew something like this would happen, but I never thought he'd go down in a single hit. Dojin stepped forward again, stomping his foot onto Takashi's head, over and over. A panicked Inju grabbed John's hand. At this rate, you're going to kill him, she pleaded. You have to stop him. Taking her words to heart, John stepped forward and shouted, Dojin, stop. You'll kill him. But it seemed Dojin had lost all reason. I'm taking full responsibility for my actions, he said, completely unfazed. John didn't waste another second, running over and grabbing Dojin's arm to pull him away. What good is responsibility? She yelled as she dragged him. If you were so responsible, you wouldn't have caused this mess. I've seen plenty of scum like this before. It's better to just finish them for good. Inju rushed to Dojin's other side, grabbing his free arm. She leaned in close and whispered, Dojin, you don't need to let trash like this bother you. Just stop. The other person chimed in, I'm sure they're scared to death by now. She glared over at Takashi's crew and shouted a warning. If you don't want the same treatment, answer clearly and never bother us again. Renji, Daigo, and Sager immediately dropped to their knees, pleading. Yes, yes, of course. Dojin stared down at them with an icy smile. Is kneeling all you can do? Now, slam your heads on the ground. Renji, Daigo, and Sager didn't dare hesitate. immediately smashing their foreheads into the pavement. "Yes, sir," they yelled in unison. Then, as if remembering something, Dojin spoke. "The Yakuza cut off a finger when they mess up, right?" At those words, their faces drained of all color. They slammed their heads even harder against the ground. "Please, spare us." Dojin continued. "Say, I'm sorry for being a piece of trash, and I'll let it go." Sager's arrogant demeanor had completely vanished. His voice trembling, he forced out the humiliating words. "I'm sorry for being a piece of trash." Nearby, Inu and the others could barely stifle their laughter. Lying on the ground, Takashi was barely conscious, his life force nearly extinguished. He struggled to move, managing only to utter one last word. The sound caught their attention, and Dojin, Inju, and John turned back. Dojin just glanced at the man and let out a heavy sigh. Sao Paulo, Brazil. Inside an office, a man held a file, studying its contents intently. Across from him stood John and Inu. The official scanned them both, then mused aloud. "And they expect me to believe this story. An S-rank hero, Takashi, beaten so badly, he's beyond recovery, by a single opponent. If only Takashi were injured, it might not be so hard to believe. But to inflict this much damage is no simple feat, and I was hoping for cooperation between Korea and Japan. We still have that fissure in the mountains to handle. Now, all of that is in jeopardy." The official paused, then continued. "According to this report, the Brazil Association has no involvement. This matter falls to the Hero Associations of Korea and Japan. You will receive their final decision." Inu replied softly. "Understood." The official pressed on. "So, have you visited the fissure near the mountain yet? Anything unusual?" John wondered, what does he mean, unusual? But Inu quickly answered, "No, nothing out of the ordinary." "I see." The man looked back at the file. "Ah, one more thing. The name Dojin appears constantly in this report. Why isn't he here?" Inu hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Well, about that." John stepped in. He said he had a few things to take care of and left. The official raised an eyebrow. "A few things?" The scene changes to a hospital, where terrified whimpers echo down the corridor. It was Takashi. His body and face were so heavily bandaged that he couldn't speak, only make muffled, desperate sounds. Standing beside his bed was Dojin, holding a bouquet of flowers. He looked like a concerned visitor, but his face was a mask of pure killing intent. He stared down at Takashi, his voice sharp as a razor. "Lie still. I came all this way just to see you." He then revealed a small, golden orb. A single, glowing red eye was set in its center. Dojin held it close to Takashi's eyes. "Now," he commanded, "tell me everything you know about this." The orb was clearly a hypnotic device. From his bed, Takashi began to speak in a monotone. "Because of this, an inferior being like myself has caused a great inconvenience to the members of the Korean Guild." Hearing this, Dojin's expression remained cold and unreadable. He turned and walked out of the room. Behind him, Takashi remained trapped in the trance, repeating a mantra over and over. "Die, Yakuza. Die, Yakuza. All of you, die." News of the violent clash between the Korean and Japanese heroes was spreading like wildfire. Dojin had utterly crushed Takashi. The incident was officially confirmed. But in this world, violence only creates more violence and a deeper hatred. The public is fiercely divided over Dojin's quest for revenge. Will the world's most mysterious hero finally break his silence? Meanwhile, in a private office, Junkie sips his tea. He tells Hong Kai that news about Dojin has completely flooded the country. Hong Kai looks at him, replying, "It's an absolute phenomenon. I see his name plastered across the headlines every single day. But is it true? Did the Japanese Hero Association really stop their investigation?" Junkie asks, glancing at his tablet. He confirms Takashi's side officially admitted it. Hong Kai can't believe it. That makes no sense. That guy always uses any chance he gets to stir up trouble. Junkie looks up from the screen, meeting his gaze. "Are you saying Japan is hiding something they can't make public?" Hong Kai presses. "What could it possibly be?" Junkie takes another sip of tea, answering slowly, "I don't know for sure. But I have a feeling Dojin is about to become a key player, one that could shake the entire global hero landscape." The scene shifts to the luxurious D1 hotel. The operation to seal the rift in Brazil begins in just one day. International heroes have already arrived to get used to the local conditions, meeting and strategizing with heroes from other nations. After discussing the joint battle plan and specific tactics, a morale-boosting party is held the night before the mission, and the center of everyone's attention is, of course, Dojin. In one corner of the party, John laughs and chats with her friends. Nearby, Inju covers her mouth and whispers. They say the rumor that Dojin defeated Takashi has already spread worldwide. Everyone who comes up to me only wants to talk about that. And yet, he doesn't show a hint of arrogance. He's on a completely different level. Compared to a man like that, you and I are just ordinary people, aren't we? After talking for a while, she turns to John and sees no reaction. Inju thinks to herself, she's not even listening to me. What are you staring at with that dazed look on your face? Inju's eyes follow John's gaze. It's fixed on Dojin. He's politely talking with guests when a stunning woman approaches him intimately. Gloria Tyler, America's S-rank hero, voted the most beautiful hero in the world. Annoyed, Inju playfully smacks John's arm. She stands up and shouts, "This is so boring. What are we still doing here? Get up, let's go." Dojin is surprised by this sudden outburst. John, flustered, replies, "Huh. I didn't even do anything." In the middle of his conversation, something catches Dojin's eye. A flustered John is hesitantly walking toward him. Her cheeks are bright red with embarrassment, and John can't even bring herself to look him in the eye. Her expression makes him smile without realizing it. Gloria Tyler sees John's arrival and seems to understand something. She turns to leave, but not without a farewell. "It was a pleasure meeting you. Goodbye, Castle." After Gloria Tyler leaves, John asks, "Din Castle? Who's that?" He slowly sips his wine. "That would be me." She tilts her head. "You have an English name too." Dojin explains softly, "It's the name I used even before I was known as Dojin." Hearing this, John's mind starts racing. Does that mean he used to live abroad? My previous investigation didn't show any records of that. Why wouldn't he tell me about that name? A shadowy figure watches John and Dojin from a distance. Yang Pio's face is dark with contemplation. That bastard Takashi couldn't even punish a piece of trash like him. In the end, it looks like I'll have to handle this myself. A voice rings out, catching Yang Pio's attention. "But you have to be extremely careful." Dojin glances at John, who is still focused on warning him. "I know you're strong, but our enemies don't always play fair. Takashi has some close friends, and the most dangerous one is." "All right, that's enough. But shouldn't I at least know who it is?" Dojin's voice is laced with indifference. Probably just some coward who likes to act tough but has no real power. Just like Takashi, right? Don't worry about it. They're not worth our time. Not even a little. Yang Pio overhears the entire conversation and shudders with rage. He slowly glares in their direction, his eyes filled with a cold, murderous fury. Dojin's plan had worked perfectly. A smirk plays on his lips. Yang Pio's hands clench into fists, veins bulging on his skin. "You bastard. I swear I'll kill you with my own two hands." Night has fallen. Inju stares at something, her hand on her chin in thought. "This is the first time I've ever seen anything like this." They are near the Santa Rift zone. She asks, "Is the entrance to a rift supposed to be this dark and murky?" Dojin takes the lead. "What's the problem, senior? We have two S-rank heroes here. What's there to worry about? Let's just seal it quickly." Inju lets out a sigh. "Yeah, you're right. Nothing to be concerned about." She turns back to the group and shouts, "Everyone, move in." They respond in unison, following orders. Under the dark sky, they file one by one into the rift. John turns to Dojin, who is standing perfectly still, lost in thought. She speaks up. "What is it?" Dojin asks her. "You don't feel it." She tilts her head, confused. "Feel what?" She turns to Inju beside her. "Senior, you don't notice anything unusual?" Inju scans the area. "Absolutely nothing." "What are you talking about?" Sweat beads on Dojin's forehead, his sharp gaze fixed ahead as he says, "The mana density. It's rising at an incredible rate." Dojin's team stood guard, scanning the area as a light breeze rustled the trees. The phone's display read 23.61%. Unseen, an observer watched from the trees, knowing it would soon hit 30%. Damned insects. If only this whole mess could wipe every last one of them out. Deep down, the team was nearing its limit. Their bodies felt like lead, and breathing was becoming a struggle. Dojin frowned. The mana here was unnatural, its concentration even thicker than the forest. John looked at Dojin with concern. He'd never seen their leader look this grim before. Suddenly, something seized both her and Dojin's attention. A terrifying presence was lurking nearby. A voice cut through the darkness, calming the group. "Everyone, stay calm." Inu scanned the team and warned, "This might be a unique property of this rift. Our bodies feel heavier than usual, so don't let your guard down for a second. John, you protect the formation." "You too, Dojin." She crossed her arms. "Got it." She continued, "We just need to find the source of this mana shift." "Right," Dojin replied. Inu stressed their top priority. "Close the rift. Everyone, stay alert and move out." "Yes, sir," they yelled in unison. As Dojin entered the Santarem rift, he began assigning his team their tasks. This was the northern region of Brazil, the largest city within the rift's influence, where the French, Korean, and Brazilian teams had been dispatched. Deep in the jungle, a group of people were flailing wildly. Blood sprayed through the air as wings with black veins beat relentlessly. A swarm of glowing red eyes descended upon the humans. Killer bees. vicious, hornet-type flying monsters. John gritted his teeth in pain as his comrades were relentlessly swarmed. This is impossible, John thought. Even a C-rank hero should be able to hunt killer bees. One of the heroes leaped into the air, flailing at the bees, only to lose his balance and crash headfirst into the ground. Dojan glanced back at the fallen man. Even an A-rank hero was being completely overwhelmed. The bees, with their blazing red eyes, showed no fear. Dojan's hands clenched in fury as he threw a punch at one of the creatures. But not only did he miss, he was stung in return. Damn it, it's so heavy. A normal punch should have made it explode. Panic erupted as people fled. Some were swarmed by 2 or 3 bees at once. How many would make it out alive? The scene shifts. A giant club smashes down right where Inju was standing. Black orcs stared at her, their eyes filled with hunger. Dojin barely dodged their attack, struggling to catch his breath. This is strange. Why are these black orcs so powerful? In another corner, 2 heroes teamed up against the orcs. One lunged forward, striking an orc with his bare hands. Smoke rose from the monster's body where the blow landed. Enraged, it raised its weapon to counterattack. A devastating blow was about to descend, but Ron moved like lightning, grabbing both heroes and pulling them out of harm's way. The heroes looked at her with gratitude. Thanks. Ron warned them, don't be so reckless. Then, she shot forward like a blur, heading straight for the orc. The orc swung its massive weapon, ready to strike at any moment. A flash of purple light enveloped both Ron and the monster. She powerfully kicked the back of the orc's neck, stunning it. It whipped its head around, preparing to crush Ron with its fist. But she was faster. Before it could even attack, she launched herself high into the air. Ron's powerful legs came crashing down on the orc's head. But as she pressed her attack, another orc charged in. It roared, swinging its blade down with immense force. But as the blade fell, it realized Ron had vanished. The only thing it struck was its own kind. The orc was frozen in shock and rage, and while it was distracted, Ron launched a devastating counter from behind. The kick sent the orc flying so far it dropped its weapon. It slammed into the ground, blood trickling from the corner of its mouth. Dojin and the others watched, unable to blink, all sharing the same thought. We tend to forget just how terrifyingly strong Ron is. This is the power of an S-rank hero. Absolutely monstrous. The orc let out a furious scream, but it was cut short by a fist slamming directly into its face. That punch came from Dojin and Enju. Facing a hunt this difficult right at the start, even with the 2 of them, closing this rift won't be easy. The orc lay in a heap on the ground as Ron slowly approached. What are you looking at? She asked. Dojin stared intently. Do you see that black, wave-like thing here? Ron repeated the word, confused. A wave? Dojin pointed at the orc. You have to really focus to see it. Ron wondered, what is that? A realization dawned on Dojin. This is the reason they're suddenly so much stronger. He grew serious. Why is there dark mana here? Hearing this, the others outside the rift froze for a few seconds. A heavy silence fell over the group. The night wind whispered through the rustling trees. From deep within the earth, a monster made of sludge began to rise. Ho Seung swung his blade, slicing through it and sending slime flying everywhere. The black ooze dripped slowly to the ground. The monster furiously chased after Ho Seung. Seeing the danger, Dojin rushed in to help. He leaped high into the air, preparing a devastating strike. Dojin's power rained down on the monster like a storm, causing it to explode in a shower of slime. It reformed instantly. The monster was completely unfazed by their attacks. Sung Ho couldn't believe what he was seeing. Beside him, Dojin was just as stunned by their unimaginable strength. The beast charged, lunging straight for Seung Ho. The impact sent him flying backward, and he struggled just to stay on his feet. Seung Ho's protective armor was now in tatters. He warned John that their attacks could tear right through their combat gear. This was incredibly dangerous. The monsters grew even more frenzied, bearing razor-sharp fangs as slime dripped from their jaws. He screamed, "What the hell is going on?" Huang was struggling, his stamina rapidly draining. The monster saw its chance and lunged to attack. But suddenly, Inju's shadow flashed past, her blades slashing at the creature. In another corner, a monster opened its jaws wide, about to devour Seung Ho. Swoosh! A brilliant flash of steel from Inju's blade cut through the air. After landing, a chilling thought crossed her mind. If these swamp demons were this terrifying, then Valkera would be a true nightmare. This rift feels strange. Could it be from Brazil? Is it possible this disaster is spreading across the entire world? The rift zone near Mushe. They were moving at an insane speed, and everyone was wiped out. Even Arvado from Brazil is gone. David from France, too. All of them taken out by just a few Valkera. In the middle of the fight, John glanced back at Dojin, her face full of worry. Dojin calmly shattered the monster's teeth with his bare fists. He casually flicked the grime from his hand. That's right. The Valkera are also infected with dark mana, so we have to be extremely careful. John was confused. Dark mana. You mean that black aura that was around the dark orc? Like the stuff covering these swamp demons now. Does it make the monsters stronger? Dojin answered softly. Yes, it does. She was still busy fighting off the creatures. His voice cut in. Think of it as concentrated mana being injected into their bodies, John asked while parrying another monster. Mana. Like magic from a video game. The monster dissolved into a puddle of mud, finally giving John a moment to breathe. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? Is mana actually a real thing in this world? Dojin explained quietly. It's the biggest difference between a hero and an ordinary person. Suddenly, a monster roared with its mouth wide open when a wave of force slammed into it from nowhere, completely crushing it. He clenched his fist, a thought rising in his mind. A world that doesn't know the concept of mana. It must be truly peaceful, right? But that peace won't last much longer. Dojin's gaze shot toward another monster. He swung his arm, landing a merciless blow. Dojin hammered it with punch after punch. Then he braced himself and stomped down hard. The creature burst apart, showering the ground with layers of slime. Suddenly, it exploded, the loud boom echoing throughout the forest. After the battle, everyone stopped, exhausted, trying to catch their breath. Everyone tried to regain their strength. Behind Dojin, John approached him. Hey, that mana, especially the dark mana. That's what's making the monsters so strong, right? He turned his head to look at her. Yeah. It's like giving an athlete a superpowered dose of steroids, John replied softly. Ah, I get it. But Dojin, how do you know so much about this? He breathed heavily, sweat rolling down his cheek. It would be stranger if you did know. The dangerous path cut through an area teeming with swamp demons. Just as Dojin had guided, the place where Valkera appeared was extremely hazardous. They had slowed their pace, and everyone was hanging on Dojin's every word. Suddenly, Inju held up a hand, signaling them to stop. Just like Dojin said, these are Valkera food cocoons. Countless pods had appeared, each one wrapping a strange creature inside. She looked at them. Be careful. Could a Valkera be nearby? Dojin cut her off. His hand began to glow with power. This is the real danger zone. It's a good thing we found it early. Inju's mouth fell open in surprise. Are you a mage? Dojin, is this place dangerous? Because of these cocoons, Dojin thrust his hand forward, unleashing the power he had gathered. The cocoons exploded in a split second. He watched the massive flames rise. The Valkera have absorbed dark mana. They won't just use these cocoons as puppets. If we hadn't dealt with this now, we would have been surrounded and killed. Now, all we need to do is catch the Valkera. Dojin's power flew forward, causing the cocoons to detonate. Everyone stared at him in silence, lost in thought. Inju stood there, her mind racing. Even though this was her first time facing this situation, he seemed to know everything. The more I watch him, the more extraordinary he seems. At first, I just thought he was strong, but this power has clearly surpassed human limits, hasn't it? John approached Dojin, placing a hand on his shoulder. Be honest with me. Are you on your second life or something? Dojin found questions like that amusing. A second life? He thought to himself. I guess you could call it that. John turned her head to look at Inju. How much further until we reach the rift entrance? She replied. As soon as we get through this forest, we'll be halfway there. Dojin wasn't satisfied. He scoffed. Halfway? He then made a decision that shocked everyone. We are sealing this rift today. Inju glanced around. Maybe Dojin can handle that, she muttered. But the rest of the party is finished. Most of them were completely drained from the swamp crossing, exchanging looks of pure exhaustion. He quickly assessed the three of them. Dojin sighed. All right, get some rest. I'll take care of the Valkera and be right back. And with that, he shot forward like a bolt of lightning. His speed was so incredible that within seconds, his figure vanished completely from everyone's sight. Ho-Seim couldn't believe his eyes. How can he? Inju was just as stunned. He still has that much energy left. Dojin blitzed onward at a terrifying pace. As he ran, his eyes darted left, then scanned to the right, as if searching for something specific. Finally, he spotted his target, a spider spinning its web. He closed the distance instantly. Found you. Dojin raised his sword, ready to strike. The spider sensed the danger and let out a piercing shriek. Suddenly, its body swelled to a monstrous size. A thick barrage of webs shot out from its abdomen. Without a moment's hesitation, Dojin dodged the creature's attack. He landed gracefully in a corner. A brilliant flash of steel cut through the air, and the giant spider was sliced into countless pieces. Its remains fell weakly to the ground. After the fight, he let out a weary breath. Dojin wondered if it was because he was absorbing dark energy through his mana control technique that he could fight this much and still not feel tired. A moment later, he returned to the group's camp. John asked Inju in disbelief, Did he really take down a Valkera that fast, all by himself? It's unbelievable, she agreed, her thoughts mirroring his. He doesn't even look tired in the slightest. Dojin delivered his report. I don't sense any more monsters in this area. Stop overthinking it and get some rest. Exhausted, everyone agreed. Right. He settled down next to the campfire, while Inju helped bandage Hosung's wounds. The party members tended to their own tasks, taking the rare chance to recover. The meat roasting over the fire slowly sizzled. Fat dripped from it, looking absolutely delicious. Dojin watched it intently, not daring to look away for a second, as if afraid it would burn. John approached, pointing to a skewer. Can I try a piece of that? Dojin handed one to him. John's face lit up. Thanks. From a nearby tree, Hoseung watched them. Why did you suddenly decide to eat that? John just shrugged. Who knows? Maybe this is the secret to his insane strength. Curiosity getting the better of him, he moved closer. Should I try some? Could it actually work? John scooted over. Sit down. What have you got to lose by trying it? He took a huge, satisfying bite of the meat. Dojin watched him devour it. A small smile touched his lips as he thought, that meat won't do much more than fill your stomach. But I don't dislike people like you, who hunger to become stronger. Consider this a small gift. Dojin reached out, channeling a sliver of his energy into Hosung and John. John turned to Hoseung, amazed. I ate the meat, and now my body feels full of power. His friend's eyes widened in agreement. I feel it too. Dojin watched the two of them, a satisfied smile on his face. Inju held up the map. She pointed to a small vortex symbol. If we continue straight from here, we'll reach the core of the rift. But everyone is exhausted. We should fall back and hit it tomorrow. Dojin said we have to seal the rift today, but we still need a solid plan to approach it, right? Inju asked John. So she agreed with him after all? She closed her eyes, feeling helpless. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tired. And the monsters are getting stronger from that dark energy. He stared at the map, lost in thought. The original plan was to seal the rift as late as possible to farm more materials. Things like the green crocodile heart and other materials exclusive to Brazil. I need to gather as many rare resources as I can here. But the appearance of this dark energy has ruined everything. Unexpected variables like this are never a good sign. This dark energy. It gives me a really bad feeling. Dojin pulled out a pouch. Inside were countless red stones. He instructed them to take the stones back to the hotel first. Then he slung the pouch over his shoulder and started to leave. Dojin glanced back with a smile. I'll seal the rift and catch up with you all in no time. A grotesque slime monster appeared, its massive jaw filled with sharp fangs wide open. It let out a deafening roar. Unafraid, Dojin charged straight toward it. Behind him, more and more monsters began to surface. They opened their mouths wide, as if ready to devour him whole. Dojin's pupils dilated. He leaped into the air, cutting a long arc through their ranks, then plunged his hand deep inside the slime. What he pulled out was a brilliant, glowing ruby. Back at the camp, a worried Inju asked John, Do you think Dojin's battle is going okay? She let out a breath. I saw him take off like a bullet right after he said goodbye. Inju stared in the direction Dojin had gone. Yeah, I saw it too. John shared his thoughts. He still seemed to have plenty of energy left. She linked her arm with John's, tilting her head teasingly. Then why the long face? Are you worried about Dojin? She squeezed her eyes shut, hiding her concern. Never. She frowned, thinking to herself, it's just a little embarrassing, that's all. It's crazy. They're both S ranks, yet the gap in their power is just astronomical. Is there anyone else in the world who's an S rank on his level? Fresh from his battle with the slime monster, Dojin now faces his next challenge, a horde of black orcs. He launched himself into the air, bringing his sword down in a brutal arc, splitting an orc's skull clean in two. Without pause, he slashed across another's eyes. Dojin's assault was a storm of steel, relentlessly striking their heads until the black orcs roared in fury. They raised their crude weapons, bellowing. Dojin simply let out a calm breath as their cleavers slammed down, shattering the very earth. Dojin raised a hand, and an inferno of power erupted from his palm, shooting like a comet towards the monster horde. The orcs were instantly obliterated in a thunderous explosion. As the dust settled, monster after monster collapsed, smoke billowing from their charred remains. That night, the sky was a brilliant galaxy of stars. And down below, Dojin clutched a ruby core in his hand. The next morning, the team set out once more. Their packs weighed heavily on their shoulders as they forced their exhausted bodies ever forward. They moved in a single file line through the wilderness. Suddenly, something lunged from the shadows. A swift blade intercepted it in a flash, sending a spray of blood into the air. It was Dojin's sword. His arm was still raised, his expression completely unfazed. Dojin's sharp gaze scanned the area. He reached into the creature's corpse and pulled out a fresh, red heart, then dropped it into a glass jar for preservation. He sealed the lid, securing his prize. On the ground lay the monster Dojin had just slain. He rummaged through the body again and pulled out 2 ruby cores. But Dojin wasn't finished, and the pile of gems began to grow. After a while, he had a small mountain of cores. "These monsters drop some decent loot," he commented. "This should be more than enough." Dojin shouldered his pack once again. With one hand on his sword for support and the other gripping his strap, he forged ahead. Meanwhile, at the Brazil Hunter Association headquarters, inside the main control room, operators watched the surveillance monitors intently. Suddenly, they noticed something unusual. A red dot appeared on the map, pulsing with an unknown signal from the Santarem region. But just as quickly as it appeared, the red dot vanished. The confused operators held their breath, before finally letting out a collective sigh of relief. "It's gone." They cheered. The gate must have been closed, but someone in the Santarem division had a question. Which team was dispatched to that location? One of them recalled, it was a team from Korea, the Silk Flower Guild, I believe. Jenny turned and confirmed. "That's right. The guild contacted us 10 minutes ago, reporting that they were on their way back." Do-hyuk looked at her. 10 minutes ago, they said they had just left the gate at that time. Jenny continued with her report. Do-hyuk, still confused, pressed further. What exactly happened? 10 minutes ago, the 2-headed beast, Dojin, had spotted it and drawn his sword. It was a creature that had evolved at an incredible rate, fueled by a surge of dark mana. The 2-headed beast raised its massive foot and brought it crashing down. The sheer force of the stomp sent violent tremors through the entire area. Beneath its foot, a small spatial vortex swirled. That must be the core of the gate, he thought. Time to end this quickly. Dojin raised his sword, meeting the charging beast head-on. As it thundered toward him, Dojin's power erupted like a blazing inferno. The monster spun like a cyclone, its own power clashing with Dojin's. His pupils dilated with intense focus. Myriad sword style, second form. It began with a torrent of fiery, golden light rushing forward. Dojin himself became a whirlwind, charging straight ahead, his eyes cold and devoid of warmth. He raised his blade, ready to strike. Terminus, sword art, second stance. The Gamri Grimoire activated, infusing his blade with ancient and powerful magic. The 2-headed beast bared its sharp fangs and let out a deafening roar, just before being slammed by the full force of Dojin's power. This sent it into an absolute rage. Muscles like boulders tensed beneath its dark hide, ready to explode with terrifying strength. Finally, it shrieked in pain. A smirk played on Dojin's lips. "Surprised, are we? This is just the beginning." Dojin raised his sword again, dashing towards the beast. A single, lightning-fast slash tore across its torso, drawing blood. Its eyes burned red with fury as it swung a massive arm to retaliate. But Dojin leaped high into the air, effortlessly dodging. Looking down, he declared, "Now, it's my turn." Dojin's sword multiplied into countless copies, each one cloaked in a blazing aura. A relentless barrage of strikes rained down upon the beast. The power was so immense that a single stray blade sliced an ancient tree clean in half. The resulting explosion shook the entire forest. The monster's eyes went wide and white. It launched itself high into the air, its arms ready to deliver a devastating blow from above. Without a word, Dojin swung his sword, severing one of its legs midair. The beast froze for a moment, stunned by the searing pain. Dojin pressed his attack, leaping high again, his sword raised for the finishing blow. With one final slash, the 2-headed beast was split in two. Sheathing his sword, Dojin let out a weary sigh. A magical vortex materialized nearby, and it seemed to be growing larger by the second. Dojin observed it, thinking to himself, "Even though I'm this close to the core, the concentration of dark mana hasn't decreased at all. If the core isn't the source, could this mana be flowing from somewhere else? That would mean someone is behind all of this. To flood a fissure with this much dark magic could only be the work of an overlord or a legendary archmage from a bygone era. But if a being that powerful truly walked this earth, most of the planet would already be nothing but ash. I can't jump to any conclusions yet. In any case, if the source of this power is from beyond the gate, just closing it won't solve the root problem." Dojin clenched his fist, focusing his power. He took his stance, then unleashed a devastating punch right into the vortex's heart. A single cracked spiderweb from the point of impact, spreading out before the entire vortex shattered into nothingness. Dojin watched it crumble. "I need to investigate the Brazil Hero Association headquarters next." Ingun sat at his desk, his hand trembling as he read the report. Standing before him, Chung Kang braced himself for the coming storm. Ingun's face darkened. "Forget the source of the magic. Forget the investigation. This entire report reads like an impossible fantasy." Chung Kang could only murmur a soft, "Yes, sir." Ingun's expression hardened. Some of these rifts required a three-nation allied force to even attempt to close, and in the end, only a single S-rank hero made it out alive. And yet, another one of our teams from Korea not only sealed their rift, but they did so with 0 casualties. Chun Kang began to relay what little information he had. We're getting a flood of urgent reports from the other fracture zones, but most teams are reporting mission failure and are being forced to retreat. I will compile all the data and submit a detailed report immediately. Get it to me as soon as possible. Ingun leaned on his desk, lost in thought. Every one of those rifts was assigned at least one S-rank hero, and they still failed this catastrophically. So the only successful team was the Korean unit led by the hero, John. A cold sweat trickled down Chun Kang's back. Sir, calling them the Korean team isn't entirely accurate. Ingun cut him off sharply. What do you mean by that? He began scanning the documents again. Did we miss something critical? Wasn't the Korean team dispatched to Santarem the one that closed the fissure? But the next words Chun Kang spoke made Ingun's blood run cold. The rift. It was sealed after our team had already withdrawn from the area. He slammed the papers down on his desk, unable to process the news. Then who sealed it? And where is Hero Duan right now? Chun Kang informed him she was on her way to headquarters to give her full report. Ingun's composure finally shattered. He shot to his feet, slamming his hands on the desk. He roared, "Get her in my office immediately." In the hour it took for Hunzu and Jung Inju's team to travel from the rift back to HQ, Dojin had already sealed the first fracture and was now approaching the second. He stared at the water's surface. The entrance to this rift was submerged. Dojin adjusted the strap on his pack and walked forward without hesitation. All right then, let's get this done.